Men of Reddit who proposed, and she said no. What happened afterwards with your life? Congrats. My parents did the opposite of that. Background. My mom joined the army after graduation from high school, 1983, got sent to basic and eventually ended up at Fort Stewart. As my mom describes, the barracks sucked, and she didn't want to live there. The only way to live off base was to 1. Get approval from the co, which was very uncommon, or 2. Be married. So my mom's then boyfriend, Ted, liked the idea. They took a quick trip to SC to get married, because there was a 2-week wait in Georgia, because you needed to have a blood test done, found a house and settled in. A year into married life, and Ted is getting ready to leave, and both had decided months before that the relationship wasn't good anymore. So my mom bought a bottle of cheap champagne and divorce papers to the house on their 1-year anniversary, 1986. My father joined the army intelligence, married a woman, Stacy, that he thought he loved, that his family approved of, Jewish. Got sent to New Mexico, found out he didn't like that so much, and hopped into the army medic system. He got transferred to South Korea for a year, 1983, and it took him 4 months to save up to bring Stacy over to live while he was in South Korea. But surprise, /s, Stacy had been unfaithful since the beginning. Dad drops Stacy quickly and gets transferred to Fort Stewart in 85. Now, in 86, my mom is newly divorced and has just gotten orders to report back to the barracks within the week. Since Ted, now ex-husband, had already left, my mom decides to go out with a bang, hosts a house selling party, and invites her friends and friends of friends. My dad was a friend of a friend, and shows up to have fun. Everyone's getting drunk. And, as my mom describes the event, as my mom is coming back from the bathroom, my father attempts to have a conversation that went roughly like, "This is a great house, it's a shame you have to sell. Got any offers? No. Hey, wanna marry me, and we can keep living here." My mom thought he was joking, because he was stupid drunk, but the next morning he was still adamant. And my mom agreed to the idea with the stipulation that either one of them could walk at any time. Mom says she fell in love with the idiot about 3 months after they got married. They're having their 35th wedding anniversary this year. I've told this story before and wanted to share again. Very first girlfriend ever. Started dating at 17. After 6 years of dating I proposed. She said no. I'm sorry. I asked why. She said, "I've been thinking about this for a while, but didn't talk to you about it. I found someone else." Then she broke up with me right then and there. I asked if she cheated, and she said no. "We are just friends right now. But he makes me happy when I'm with him and you just don't. You used to, but not anymore." I tried sabotaging their relationship when I found him begging her for nudes. Tattled to her ultra-Christian parents that he was twice her age, which he is, and did everything I could to be the insane one. Finally realized what I was doing, apologized, promised to never talk to her or her family ever again. I sold the ring and used the money to buy a guitar and a boatload of weed and spiraled out of control for 3 years. Flunked all my classes, got a dead-end job at a construction gig, slowly descended into borderline alcoholism. Couldn't leave the house, or go to work, or do my job without being high. Gained a ton of weight, let myself go. Finally contemplated suicide, planned it out with a 20-page instruction manual on how to make it painless, not screw it up, and not hurt anyone in the process. Never went through with it, because I kept getting scared, and spending my suicide fund on weed and alcohol. Finally broke down, and told my parents all of this. Asked for help. Spent another year in a rehab program with a therapist. Got out and have been clean for 3 years by this September and still wake up at 3 AM feeling sick every couple of months for the way I treated her after having spent 6 years telling her that I loved her. But that's all over now, and all I can do is learn from it, promise to be better, and keep going. So now I'm turning 29 in a week, still living at home with parents, and constantly battling self-loathing and anxiety, while working a job for $9.25 an hour. But I'd pay my parents $300 a month to stay with them, and I'm going back to school. taking the minimum number of credit hours per semester, since I'm paying for it out of pocket, and I work full time and overtime when I can get it, but slowly dragged my GPA from a 1.28 to a 2.64, and can start getting help next semester instead of paying for all of it out of pocket. Now, I also lost a ton of weight during the pandemic and weighed just 189. Now, in rehab I dropped to 220, but I was closer to 245 to 250 before that. Safe to say I won't be worth dating for a long time, but maybe when I get my degree under my belt and finish growing and learning I can get a self-sustaining job, I can move out and truly start over Reddit. Hey guys, I'm getting a swath of PMs asking what the number one thing was that helped me through that time, and I'm saying without a single doubt that punk rock did it, and going to punk concerts. My mom rejected my father the first 2 times, lol. There was no real hard feelings between them. I guess my mother was just not ready for marriage yet. She ended up proposing to him. My grandmother and mother sewed a suit for their dog to wear and attached a sign around his neck with a ring that read, "Will you marry me?" Then she sent the dog out into the kitchen to beg for scraps while my father was preparing dinner. The next thing she heard was a very concerned voice shouting, "Honey, the dog is asking me to marry him." Cue absolute hysterics. My dad said yes to the proposal. My human dad and my human mom are still married 2 decades later. The fact that I even had to clarify this is severely disappointing. TSK, 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 edit 1. My parents found the photo. They are just getting it sent, so stay tuned, and I will post the pet tags. Edit 2. My god, you guys are more impatient than kids at an ice cream truck. Here is your pet tax. Haha. http imga.com/a/mka34. Edit 3. You're La Savage. Give the old good boy a break. Edit 4. I find it humorous that my photo has more views than this thread has upvotes. So I guess I just wanna say hello to all of the lurkers out there. I hope you all have a wonderful morning/day/evening/night. I swear I'm not trying to be passive aggressive. Just realize that it could come across that way. My mum actually said no to my dad's proposal when they were younger. Not because they weren't in love, but because she wasn't sure if it was something she actually wanted to do, rather than something that society expected of her, or whatever. They still stayed together and had kids, hence why you're reading this now. And then when my dad was terminally ill a few years ago, my mum plucked up the courage and asked him. Just to get her back after all those years, he said no, before taking her up on the offer. A few days later he died a happy man. Edit. Holy shit, I uploaded this before bed and haven't been on Reddit since. Just flicked it on to see all of your lovely responses. Really does mean the world to hear people taking some joy from their story. Thanks so much. For a bit more context on this, it was actually 2 declined proposals, not just one, both pre-children too, so let's say I'm lucky. Also, when they did get married, it wasn't purely an action for the estate or whatever they already had, wills etc. point sorted. It was just one of those last great days as a family. In fact, my sister and I were the only 2 present at the registry office, and when I say office, they literally squeezed us into one of the registrar's offices as there was a big waiting list for weddings and we didn't know how long he had. He died 3 months later, so we were all hugely grateful for them for helping us out like that. Not sure if this count, but I proposed. She said yes, but 1 month before the wedding she took it back. This is what happened immediately with my life. I personally lost about $3,000 worth of deposits. My parents and her parents lost about $4,000 each on deposits. Me and my parents are working class, so it took years for us to financially recover from this. I spent $2,200 on a ring I didn't want. My biggest regret, and will say this anyone who listens. The engagement ring chain I bought it from wouldn't take it back. I took it to pawn shops and they'd only offer a few hundred. This engagement ring store bank on customers who wants the whole ring, stone, band, setting. If you're going to buy a ring, just buy the stone or gold band setting. You can get a better deal from a local jewelry store. Apparently my gem I bought was cheap. Most of the cost of the ring was BS. Most of my family was from out of state, and a lot of people were pissed because they cancelled their flight. I had to go to the So I didn't leave my room. I couldn't take any calls because everyone was pissed and I didn't want to hear it. I was depressed and just stayed in bed. One day my roommate grabbed me and took me to the ER where the doctor treated me for severe dehydration and an infection. What happened? When I got over it, I became stronger for it. I didn't propose to anyone until a decade later. Honestly, there wasn't anyone that I didn't love deeply enough to be in a committed relationship. But when I proposed I was in my 30s. A relationship was more mature than my first time I proposed. We are now married for 13 years. She's my best friend. When I have good news, she's the first person I want to tell it to. When I have bad news, she's the first person I want to tell it to. I financially recovered as well. I learned my lesson about the engagement ring. Only paid $300 for it. She loved it and treasures it. After our 10-year milestone, we were doing so well. I told her to pick a wedding ring of any cost. She refused. She still wears that cheap $300 ring and loves it. We received a letter from the immigration office saying that she was lacking some documents. At the moment we were stressed, both of us, with work and study, and none of us were sufficiently fluent in German to decipher this kind of language. We went to the university office for foreign students. The lady in charge translated to us the letter badly, telling us that even presenting the documents they would proceed with the deportation process. We panicked. Looking for some more help, we ended in the city hall. With the adrenaline rush, I proposed to her in quite a loud voice, "If we get married, could we stop the deportation?" I asked the poor guy in the information office, I can't remember, if he gave us an answer. We want to marry her. Will you marry me? She started laughing. I started laughing. The guy in the office gave us the telephone to the pertinent department and asked us to call. We went out of the city hall and we couldn't stop laughing. She said to me, "Well, thank you, but let's wait a bit." After the weekend we went to immigration office and the people there explained which documents were missing, how to get them. She wasn't denied the visa, and we kept living in the way we planned. It was intense, and, in retrospective, really funny. Addendum: we are not married, and never planned, but we live together. She got a job that provides her with a visa. Soon she will present herself to citizenship exam. It was absolutely horrible at first. I legit thought my life was ending, as shortly after that she wanted to take a break. Pretty much she wanted to date her co-worker at Baker Square and had a really weird cultish relationship with all her co-workers. At first I was confused / upset, all of the above. But weirdly enough, one of her friends / acquaintance for me contacted me since she knew I was in a rough patch, completely innocently, and we hung out, and she even knew that I wanted to get back together with her at some point, so it wasn't anything immediate. Eventually, the girl I proposed to found out her co-worker boy toy was a douche and wanted to get back together with me, and obviously I had been fretting about it for like 3 months, so I instantly said yes, even though unknowingly I started forming a bond with her friend / my acquaintance. Slowly, things just started deteriorating as I started getting honestly kind of suspicious that she wanted to get together with one of her other co-workers, and surprisingly I was actually right. She ending up breaking up with me again, and I thought I was gonna go through it all again, but this time the shock only lasted a few days, since this time I kind of had closure. Meanwhile, somehow I think the friend / my acquaintance / current girlfriend of 4 years knew that this was gonna happen and was there for me when I needed it. Like both times for me, it was super rough, couldn't even function. Got together, and honestly I can't even understand how I thought I was happy with my old girlfriend who I proposed to. I even look back, and I'm realizing that even her family was faked up. Her mom was extremely controlling, and even, disgustingly, bragged about how she dated a boy in high school for a few years, and broke up with him, and hurt his feelings so bad that he moved for mental health reasons. Like, I guess the apple didn't fall far from the tree. To be quite honest though, I miss her dad a lot. Like honestly, he messages me every once in a while. I doubt his daughter knows. And basically I can just hear it in his voice that he would rather her date me than her new boyfriend, since I had a pretty good bond with him. Even so, I still don't like to message back with anything too much, since I'd somehow weirdly feel like it's cheating on my current girlfriend who has the most chill parents I've ever met and are super easygoing. I honestly think my life would have been hell if I chose to marry my past girlfriend with a mom-in-law problem. Anyways, that's my story. Thanks for reading. It had been 5 years. Things had gotten a bit rocky. We've both worked the same incredibly time-demanding job, and it had kept us apart, despite living together, for the better part of 2 years. The promise of a 6-figure salary made it hard to let go of and do the right thing, and I proposed in a last-ditch effort to save the relationship. I'll never forget that moment. At that moment she looked at me, roses on the floor, ring in hand, and with cold eyes, filled with sadness and a sprinkle of pity, just said no. She left for a coworker that I had hired a year before, a man 20 years older than either of us, and as a person I shattered. Up until this point society, family, friends, had all reinforced that I was living life the way it should be lived. Financial security, wealth above my needs, a long-term relationship, hell, we were getting a house. In an instant all that came crashing down around me. What followed after was the single most devastating time of my life. I couldn't work, they were there. I tried but got pulled off the job. Never happens on the railroad. They will literally work you to death by another supervisor and sent to get checked at the hospital. They took me off on stress leave. Within a month I had stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped doing literally anything, didn't answer the phone, just laid there on the couch with Netflix endlessly streaming. I don't even know what point eventually some friends who hadn't seen or heard from me in some time came to check on me. I must have been in rough shape. Half the house was destroyed. My hands were just a bleeding mess from smashing things. I think there were still bits of that lovely Ike particle board stuck in my knuckles here and there. They took me to a hospital. Intake upgraded me to critical care. That was full, so I had to stay the night in a secure waiting room. The next day a doctor met with me, asked me some questions. He said, in the 13 years I've worked here, you're the most suicidal person I've ever met. I'm honestly surprised you're alive. Will never forget that. I'd never even thought of myself as a suicidal person before. I couldn't help but think dying would be easier than living through what I was feeling. They put me in a psych ward for 3 months, no outside privileges, a merry-go-round of different medications to try and help change my mood. I had no contact with the outside. I wanted it that way. I shut down social media and shut off the phone. I didn't want the friends and family who were so proud of me to see what I had become, a miserable hollow shadow of my former self. The only person I called was her. I asked her to come get me. She never came. It's hard to say what happened next. Eventually the friends who had taken me to the hospital were allowed to see me and visited from time to time. I don't remember moving out of my house. I don't remember what happened to all of my belongings. I don't remember being 28 years old. I have a picture of a birthday somewhere, but no recollection of it. I spent the next year on a lot of prescription drugs that destroyed my memory. Eventually one day I woke up in a bed, in a strange room, in a strange house. I walked out the door to a dining room, where there were no less than 7 Bibles on the table. It scared me. I had no idea where I was. There were keys to a truck, parked outside on the table in my bedroom next to what was certainly my computer. A woman stopped by, nursing student, beautiful, talented, caring. She was there to see me, and to my surprise we were dating. Had been for a time it would seem. But that was strange for me. I had known her before all of this, but never in this context, and the relationship felt weird and unnatural. The medication had run out, and I was coming out of it, starting to be more present again. Apparently the friend who brought me to the hospital was there when I was discharged and took me with him to his church. I had no place to live, and they set me up with one of their members and had paid 2 months rent for me to stay there. I've never been religious like that in my adult life, and this was strange to me, but at least I wasn't homeless. I just woke up one day with a new life and had to accept that that was the case. And so, like Mario, I started the game over again. I would go on to help the same friend who took me to the hospital through his divorce and to buy a house that we both lived in. The girl and I amicably parted ways a few months later. I started volunteering and went back to school. officially resigned from the railroad. Some of the people I left behind when I cut all ties with that relationship I still haven't spoken to again since that day. Now I'm sitting here, 6 years later, attempting to create podcasts where people have a safe space in their lives to talk about their struggles and reduce the stigma surrounding them. And launching a Facebook group and YouTube channel aimed at helping people achieve holistic wellness and self-discovery. That's the whole story, and probably the first time I've shared it. Edit. This got way more attention than I was expecting. I'm going to attempt to answer the questions below. I've never received so many, so I'll do my best. Thank you for your support and the silver and hugs, but most importantly for listening. Sometimes it's very strange to think you've gone through something so unbelievable in your life. I was the one who said no. We were high school sweethearts, had actually known each other since first grade, and despite me moving to a different city, we reconnected in high school. I followed him out to college and realized there was a whole other world out there besides the small towns I grew up in. He already had our entire life planned out, and it wasn't until we had dated 3.5 years and he surprised me with a ring and a proposal that I realized he wasn't what I wanted at all. He was lazy, never went to class, didn't stand up for himself, and was codependent. I said no. He then proceeded to literally stalk me. We lived in the same apartment complex, but different units. He would knock on my door all hours of the day. I never answered. He would call and text constantly. This was before you could block numbers on an iPhone. He attempted to break into my roommate's window and was successful because she had left it unlocked. I wasn't at the apartment, and he told her I was just trying to get some stuff. The very rare occasions I would open the door. Very shortly after our breakup, he would force his way in or stick his boot in between the door so I couldn't close it. I called the cops numerous times, but they never did anything. He would follow me if I left places. At one point, he somehow knew information that I knew he couldn't have known and found out he had somehow installed a program onto my computer to track all my passwords and keystrokes and activity. That was when I decided to change my phone number. He would leave stuff on our balcony. Letters, gifts, random shit. He did not stop and would threaten me often by saying he would find out my new phone number eventually. It did get less and less. However, to this day, I still hear from him. I'm married now for almost 4 years, and I've heard that he is also married and has a kid on the way. But a few months ago, he found my extremely obscure Facebook. It's not even my full name. It's half my first name and only my middle name. I have maybe 11 friends on there that he has no connection with. I really only use this FB to be in groups to discuss true crime and ask me to meet up with him for lunch for closure. I blocked him, but I know I'll hear from him again somehow in a few months. It's ridiculous. Honestly, I regret ever dating the guy. I didn't get to hear her say no. Here's the story. I was with my ex-girlfriend for about 6 years. We had a lot of ups and downs, but ultimately we were always able to talk and work things out. Our relationship was not bad to say the least, and I felt like the more time passed the better it was getting. We had sort of similar mindsets, but we did disagreed on certain things. However, we did connect a lot in many hobbies, ideas, and I felt like we were both in the same frequency for the most part. By November of last year I really felt like our relationship was really good and there were no problems. There came a point where she had an opportunity to go work in Japan like she once did at a certain point in our relationship. However, she said that she does not want to go live alone again and would rather go if I can go live with her, because the first time she did it, I could not live with her since we were not married, and that caused her to have a lot of depression and loneliness. For me to live with her in Japan, even if I don't work for her company, I would have to be married to her, or else the Japanese government basically says no, you can't live here. I started thinking a lot about marriage and how we've been dating for so long, and she always bothered me about how I have to propose to her since she asked me out when we started dating. So I did what I thought was best, and I decided to ask her hand in marriage, or at least attempt, since we were dating for so long, and I really thought I was going to be with her for the rest of my life. I asked multiple family and friends about rings, where to buy, who can make custom rings, what materials, everything. At this point it was December and we were approaching Christmas Day, so I planned on proposing to her on Christmas Day because both of our favorite holiday was Christmas, because of how much joy it brings and how it makes people come together. I asked for her ring size discreetly because I never really had that information. I went on ahead and looked for someone that made custom rings. I went and asked the man to make me a replica of the ring that Howell wears from the Ghibli movie Howl's Moving Castle, because her favorite movie of all time was Howl's Moving Castle, and I wanted to show her how much thought I put into the ring, and I knew that she would wear it for as long as she can. I got the ring. It was perfect, made out of pure silver. She wasn't one to want very fancy things, so she didn't care much about price value, but more about the thought that goes into it. And also I didn't have much money, but the ring was stunning nonetheless. 3 days before Christmas we had an event at a friend's house where it was a mini Christmas get together with the friend group. We went to the event, had a good time, but it was time to go home. We decided to stop by a Wendy's, since we were both hungry, and something came up where we essentially had a sort of argument and disagreement. It was a big disagreement that affected the relationship and our current status, so at the end of the argument, mind you I was not sober, I essentially said, if this is what you want then I think it's best if you find someone else. She replied with, is that what you really think? To which I sort of let out a big sigh and was about to explain to her my thoughts, but ultimately she essentially said okay. She started talking about how she's been watching my actions and how I treat her and what everyone has been telling her on how I treat her, and that the past few months I haven't given her respect she needed. How for every good thing I did, it would be overshadowed by the bad things I would do right after. She didn't want to pretend like things were okay anymore and proceeded to tell me how unhappy she was for the past few months and how she had a sudden waking up moment the past few days, that she deserves better. She apologized for the bad timing of her sudden realization and told me how her choice was influenced with the fact that she felt like I was going to propose, and proceeded to say that if I was going to she will feel really bad because she just ended the relationship, which I just simply replied with, well, you didn't know so it's not your fault. We were both crying at that point, but it was time for me to get out of the car because we were at my house and you can only talk about it so much for one night on something that was not going to change. I was living in complete ignorance for the past few months. I thought everything was fine, but obviously it wasn't. I wasn't aware of my actions towards her or even towards all my friends. I was not being mindful of a lot of things when I should have been. Overall that whole experience was a big lesson for me. It was a lesson that taught me to be more mindful about my actions, to listen to my emotions more, and to be more self-aware of how I'm acting towards others, especially towards the person that I declared my partner. I loved her immensely. If I didn't I wouldn't have gone through the lengths I did to even find a guy that was willing to do my request for the ring, or for everything else I have done for her over the years. She loved me a lot too, but one person can only tolerate so much after a while. I brought her down many times when I should encouraged her. In a way I was her biggest hater when I should have been her #1 fan. She grew a lot over the years while I stayed behind without changing for the better. I'm glad she had that sudden realization. I'm glad things ended because it helped me grow as a person for these past 7 months. It was very hard at first, but I'm doing better than I did before. To be honest, our relationship should have ended 3 years earlier, but we kept fighting for it. When I look back at it, I realize how we were not as compatible and how we had many arguments and disagreements. I held her back in many places, just like she held me back in others. We don't hate each other. We actually care for each other very much, but it was obvious that it was better if we were just friends. Again, I'm very glad this happened. I've been able to grow and focus on myself to be a better person, and she as well has been able to grow even more. The moral of the story is stay true to yourself. Focus on what makes you happy without the need of someone else. Be mindful about your actions and listen to your emotions. And if you really care about the other person, sometimes it's necessary to make the tough decision, but know that in the end it's best for both parties. It will get better at it. Wow. Thank you strangers for the gold and silver. This is the first time I ever received these things. I also want to thank everyone for reading the post and for the people that have shared experiences and thoughts. I made some grammar corrections to make it seem like I'm not rambling for some sentences. I tried my best to write this post. Since English is not my first language, here's some pictures of the ring, since someone requested to see it. I was with my girlfriend for 5 years. I planned a scavenger hunt in a park. At the end was a perfect spot to pop the question. A single bench next to the water right at sunset. The entire hunt should only take 15 minutes. But after about 5 minutes and 5 locations found, she said this is stupid. I said no worries, we don't have to do this if it dumb. Turned out she had plans that night that she did not want to be late for. That night she was with someone else. I found out immediately by accidental but dial while they're getting down and dirty in a car somewhere. I loved her very much and it crushed me. When she came home in the morning, I told her that I felt like there was nothing between us anymore and that I wanted to break up. She cried and carried on how bad a person I was. Her parents, who were very religious, told me how disappointed they were in me and that I was just leading her on. I ate that crow tail and all. A pride and ego swallowing siege. If I said she cheated, her parents would probably have disowned her. So it was my best interest not to say anything, so at least she have a home to go to. I never told her I found out she was cheating. Spent the next 10 years of my life surfing the East Coast and living off couches in exchange for cleaning their homes or being homeless. I did contract remote work making $120k a year, just shoving it in the bank while spending maybe $300 a month on necessities. My hair unkempt, my clothing dirty, torn and tattered. Nice laptop, nice surfboard and a duffel bag half full of my only possessions. It has been wonderful, never been so happy. I know she asked about me one time through her brother. Her parents told them I'm a deadbeat homeless man. I met a girl. She was poor, lived in low-income housing. But she is a hard worker, 2 jobs waiting tables, went to night classes, and had 2 kids from a previous marriage. I asked her how could she love me. I had nothing, just look at me. She did not care. She cleaned me up, cut my hair, offered to buy me some new clothing. She asked me to marry her and I did. I bought her a house and a new Toyota van for the kids, and she's not had to work a day after. Next year will be our 10-year anniversary. 11. Okay, so this is fun. I had asked her parents for consent. Not that I needed it, but yeah, no, nice to have the info right. They were super thrilled, and her mother is a hobbyist jeweler and helped me make the ring. The family tradition is to go to Mexico every year for Thanksgiving and stay at a nice resort. So I figured the thing to do was plan something there. So I work with the hotel to plan out a private beach bonfire for the whole family. They made it very special. So we are getting ready to fly down to Mexico from Denver. I'm super nervous, and a friend gives me a pot gummy to calm me down on the ride to the airport. Just past security, it kicks in, and man, it hits me like a truck. So I leave her at the gate and go to find a Pepsi and some water. Some sugar and caffeine and some water should help. Well, never made it. Passed out while trying to order at the bar. Now she's still sitting at the gate, and she hears the people sitting next to her talking about some guy dropping dead at the bar and paramedics and the whole 9 yards. Somehow she knows it's me and runs to the bar and finds me laid out on the ground, hooked up to an EKG with a paramedic leaning over me, and freaks. This is where I come to, and as I'm sort of realizing where I am and what happened, I notice the paramedic is rolling on something. Dude is higher than me. Eye is totally dilated and half giggling. So I ask him how wasted he is, and he says SHHHH. What happened with you? So I tell him the whole story while the bartender is calming my girlfriend down, and the paramedic gives me some water and tells me he's gonna get me on the plane and save the proposal. Cool beans. Somehow this totally high paramedic gets me, who can barely stand, and my hysterical girlfriend on the plane, and their seat isn't the emergency exit row, and I pass out again as we take off. I wake up as we're landing in Mexico. She's now calm, but super pissed. We get to the hotel. Everything's fine. A week of chill vacation and the big night comes. The whole family is there. We are all especially drunk that day, since everyone knows except her. So her dad and brother and uncle are buying me shots all day and welcoming me to the family, and such point she gets hammered earlier in the day, somehow ends up hurling tacos all over the towel cabana. It was a total shit show. Not ugly or bad, just a everyone partied a little too hard sort of thing point, so somehow we all end up down on the beach at the bonfire despite the whole thing basically running off the rails at every chance. I tell her we are going down there for a surprise anniversary bonfire for her parents, which she thinks is super sweet of me, and is already almost crying about point we get there. Everything is great, and I get down on one knee and hold the ring out, and it totally doesn't click in her head what is happening. The whole family goes quiet for the moment, and she's just kinda laughing with a confused look for an awkwardly long amount of time, until she finally realizes. I'm not kidding with her. She's being proposed to on a beach in Mexico at sunset with her entire family around her. Mind you, we've been together for 10 years at this point. We've discussed our future. The timing is a surprise, but we are sure we are in it for the long haul. And she just starts crying and turns to her mother and aunt and starts hugging them and crying, and I'm just waiting on my knee with the ring, awkwardly wanting to know if it's a yes or a no. Eventually her mom comes and hugs me and asks what's wrong, and I show her the ring and say she didn't say yes or no. What's happening? So her mom grabs her and tells her you gotta answer. You gotta tell him yes or no. And she's just not getting it. Like she isn't parsing the words. She hugging and crying and seems happy, but no answer, and I still have the ring. Like 40 minutes later, as the fire is dying down and we are walking off to go to dinner, she comes up and kisses me, and I show her the ring and say, so are we doing this or what? And that's when it hits her. She never answered point. It was a yes though, so I guess technically it's not a fit for the thread, but it seemed like enough of a shit show to include it here. All told it was like an hour of what the fuck. Before she said yes. We've been married a few years now, and I became a father just this past September. We live out in very rural southern Oregon, out in the woods a few minimums up the street from her parents. Happy as can be. My boy had his first slice of lemon tonight. Things really spiraled for me after she said no for the third time. Point it was around 2005. I was working as a train conductor in Southern California. It didn't pay well, but I loved being a conductor. I could barely afford to pay my mortgage, and most of my money went to my father's hospice care. I met Samantha on my route one day. She was beautiful and things sort of developed organically. We would talk every day as she commuted to work. We started dating, and that lasted around 3 years. I got up the courage to ask her to marry me, and she just flat out said no. We cried and fought, and that night she took her things out of our place and abandoned me. She stopped returning my calls. I was obsessed. I started driving by her sister's house, where I knew Samantha was staying. I could catch a glimpse of her every so often. And then one night, I'm hammered drunk and driving. I know, stupid. I'm driving down Samantha's street hoping to see her, and then I see her walking out of the house, holding some guy's hand. Point I woke up in the hospital. Turns out I had driven my car directly into Samantha and her boyfriend, killing them both. They had to pry me from the car, which had landed in her living room. But I survived. Point long story short, the lawyers argued that I intended on driving into this couple, and I was sentenced to death. California still had the death penalty. My case was in all the papers and news. I spent about 9 months on death row before it came time to be executed. The DA opted for electrocution. I remember sitting there as they put a mask on my head and shackled me to a large bench. But when the officer went to throw the switch, nothing happened. So they scrambled around trying to troubleshoot and whatnot. I was just sitting there. They tried again, and nothing happened. Then, suddenly the warden approaches me and says HMM. He must be a poor conductor. Dated a woman for 4 years and really wasn't going well. But I felt bad, because I felt guilty for leading her on at the start, and she wanted to get married. That was her priority. I was 21, and she was 28. The first time I proposed, 25 meters and 32F, she said no. So I asked again a few months later, and she still said no. So I decided to break up with her and move on with my life. Was pretty happy, and it coincided with my job moving me to a new city. I was starting to look at the relationship objectively and realized it was for the best. This girl had ruined a lot of close relationships I had and was an emotional bully. She also used to spend most of my money. I gave her my credit card details once and she took that to mean that she had unlimited use. She used to threaten my job security. She knew the CEO's daughter and would threaten to tell everyone I rapped her if I broke up with her, and she would threaten my family's lives. Said she'd hurt my sister really badly if I broke up. After not being together for 6 months, she decides to show up at my house in the new city and ring the bell incessantly. I wasn't home. She then calls me and cries asking if I was with a girl. I was. Then begs to meet up with me while she's in town. I agree, we go out to breakfast. She's on her best behavior and even pays, bearing in mind that she owes me thousands of dollars from all the sheets she bought with my card and all the fake money emergencies she had. She begs to get back together and said we should get married. At that point I just walked away and told her that I felt really emotionally traumatized and had to see a psychiatrist to deal with her shit. Never spoke to her since then. In the months following, a few things came to light. Her mom was really the one making all the decisions. So while I think she was ready, her mom made it clear that she didn't think she was. There were lots of mental health issues there, and truly I loved her, but following those conversations, she literally called her mom. After I proposed to talk with the three of us, there were a bunch of other red flags. She mocked me incessantly for playing video games. I'm not an addict or anything, but even a little here and there. Oh, spending your time productively, I see. Yeah, beach. Diabolus minions get stronger the further you go into hell, so I gotta spend time to wipe those fakers out. Spending time with my family was a chore, but she'd volunteer us to spend a week at her parents' place doing random housework for them. We had a trip planned for my cousin's wedding. I was the best man. We were to be gone 6 days, a little vacation, sometime at the lake, followed by the wedding weekend. That turned into 4 days at her parents doing landscaping, before driving to the hotel and nearly missing rehearsal. I was doing my best man duties, and the complaining that I wasn't seeing her enough, or she wanted to do things in town, but felt like she needed me. It was too much, like she knew this was grating on me. My cousin asked what was up. I told him what's been going on. We had a few beers, night before the wedding, and I knew it was over. I went back to the hotel room. We slept in different beds. We danced at the reception for appearances, but we both knew that was the longest drive home ever. We finally talked at home, and when she tried to call her mom, I told her no, this was between us. I'm not dating your mom, and I'm not breaking up with your mom. That was it. I spent some time and gathered my things, moved back into my parents' basement. She's Facebook stalked me, LinkedIn stalked me, caught her liking a post on Instagram at some point, but I'm past it. Her saying no was the best thing for me. Since then I threw myself into my career, got promoted, got fired, took a chance, and moved to a new city, found a job I really love, met another beautiful woman, who said yes, without hesitation. We've been married almost 2 years, we have a 9-month-old, and just bought a house. I love what my life has become, all because the other girl said no. I truly believe I would have been stuck in a shitty job, in a marriage I had no desire to be in had I stuck around. Did it suck? Yes, at the time. But I learned who I was, and the things that make me happy, and how I don't necessarily have to sacrifice those parts to be with somebody. I had a girlfriend throughout high school and college. We drifted apart a little throughout college, but I chalked it up to the fact that both of us really wanted to get the full college experience. We both liked partying, and I figured we'd settle down after college. I started law school the year after I graduated and asked her to move cities with me. She said no, because I was only an hour away, and she was still finishing college. That semester I bought a ring, so we could plan our wedding while I was in school and then get married as soon as I graduated. I planned on proposing during winter break. Instead of proposing, she came over and we broke up. She had a new boyfriend the next day. She never admitted to cheating, but it was obvious, and I was with a new girl a week later. We had grown so far apart over the last 4 years there really wasn't even a mourning period. We were both ready to just move on, and I realized the only reason I was going to propose was because it seemed like the right thing to do. I had cash in hand to buy the ring, but I put it on a 6-month payment plan when I got it. I must have known subconsciously this wasn't going to work out. Luckily they took it back and refunded my money because I was still on the payment plan. I don't think they would have taken it back otherwise. I'm now happily married to someone else, and so is my former almost fiancé. We never talk, but we are still friends on socials. Not so exciting, but hopefully someone else will learn from my mistakes. Don't marry a girl just because you think you should. Man up and just end it if she isn't the one, no matter how long you've been dating. A couple years before my husband and I started dating, he had been seeing a woman that he worked with for about 2 years. He works in a pharmacy and she was a store manager for the grocery store chain they were both employed at. Eventually, he decides that he's going to pop the question. He plans a weekend getaway with her, gets a ring, the whole 9 yards. A couple days before this trip, she dumps him. Doesn't explain why, just tells him their relationship isn't working anymore and ghosts him. He finds out later through a mutual friend that her parents had introduced her to a guy that they felt was more acceptable for their daughter, vaguely racist Asian people who wanted her to be with an Asian man, not a white one, and that she left him to be with that guy. The whole experience faked up his head as he had left his first wife because she was constantly cheating on him and thought he had found the one. Finally, a couple years later, we meet and he asks me out on a whim. He's very upfront about his previous relationship experiences and tells me point blank that he had some trust issues because of it. Okay, no big deal. Everyone has a past, and he's cute and sweet. Over the next several years, he realizes how high maintenance and snobby his ex-girlfriend was, how truly unhappy he was with her, and how lucky he was that she had dumped him so that he could find his way to me. As he once told me, I was so blinded by the possibility of being with someone that I never really thought if it was a good idea to be with her at all. We've been together over 8 years now and celebrated our 1-year wedding anniversary in May, and I feel like the luckiest woman ever to have him. Thanks, Tanaya. We had been dating maybe 3 months and she sent me a link to a weird boutique jewelry site. Rose gold, black and white cubic zirconias, 2 bands. In the next message, if we ever get married. Being a smart man, I saved it in my bookmarks. 3 months later she moves in with my daughter, and a year and a half later I'm the best man at my best friend's wedding. He and I are talking in the hallway waiting for the processional to start. He looks at me and says, "When are we gonna switch spots?" We had progressed from if to when in conversations about buying a house, having children of our own, pets, etc. Dancing with Her to Wonderful Tonight by Eric Clapton. I knew it was time. I went to the bank Monday and got a loan. I ordered the ring on Tuesday night. Size 9. I remembered it because she got her other ring finger sized for a present from her mom for Christmas. Took 3 weeks, but it came in. I waited maybe 5 minutes to do it. Oh my god. I just don't know. Previously to me, she had been in some bad relationships. Ignored, emotionally abused, just terrible dude after terrible dude. I come into her life, I ask her what she wants me to cook her, where she wants to go on vacation. Yeah, no, not be a complete asshole. My family loves her, kiddo adores her, her family treats me well, her mom is still one of my biggest fans. We're madly in love, but she needs to deal with her shit from her previous abusive relationships. So she starts seeking therapy. I don't ask what they talk about in there. If she wants me to know, she'll tell me. I'm here to support her, prop her up, make her feel awesome, and love the ever-loving shit out to her. She never brings up what she says about me, because while she loves me and cares about me, she isn't in romantic love with me, and she doesn't know if she ever was. But I check every single box: caring, supportive, motivated, great sex, deep lover, attractive to her, stable. So her therapist says either dump me or marry me. Don't be on the fence. Don't let the fact it's my birthday one Saturday and Christmas the next stop her sheet, or get off the pot. December 22nd we get engaged. After 2 weeks, she surprises me on the way to her family Christmas party. We tell her family. Christmas Day, we tell mine, including kiddo. And all was well, until January 9th. My parents' anniversary. I come home from work riding an emotional high. She's bawling. She can't do this. She's sorry. Everything above comes out. She had never once let on about anything. There were signs something wasn't exactly right, but she was having super emotional therapy sessions. I was crushed. She moved out 2 weeks later. A month from the day she and I got engaged, she was already seeing other guys and posting about being out on the town with friends on Facebook. My dad and my one coworker who had also had a bad post-holiday breakup saved my life. I went to therapy while she kinda went wild and unraveled her life for a little bit. 6 months later I drunk texted her. No shame in admitting this. I was trying to get laid. While she didn't respond that night, she did ask if we could talk, sober, about what happened. Eventually a month later I agreed, but under one condition: I'm not holding back. So, we had coffee. It was nice to tie up the loose ends. We have had contact since. We've gone out to lunch a few times at the request of her boyfriend. They began dating around the time of the coffee deal. He's actually a decent dude. I currently am in possession of her cats while they get ready to move across the country. All of my friends unapologetically cut off contact with her, even when I said it didn't matter to me. We can converse if we need to, but I don't have any feelings for her. I wish her well. Late to the party as usual, but I was the one who said no. I was 17, and we were living together. I don't believe we were even dating for a year. It was the 4th of July and his family was having a huge party. In the middle of the party they had me sit down, and he brought out a Build-A-Bear that talked, and it proposed to me. I was shocked. I said yes, because it was all of his family, and I was terrified if I said no. He wanted to get married and start having kids ASAP. I was ashamed to tell my parents I was engaged. I just graduated in May and everything was moving way too fast. I was actually talking to my friend about how I didn't think this was the right thing for me. This was on Facebook Messenger. I guess I just closed my laptop without clicking out of Messenger. I left to go somewhere, and when I came home he had drawn pictures of him taking his own life. He was in the corner of the basement crying. I tried talking to him, but I fell onto deaf ears. He called his mom and she came to help him get his things and leave. I was calm because I knew in that moment that he definitely was not the man for me. I need someone who is willing to talk through our problems. I need someone who will take the time to understand me. If we would have talked, my future may have been different. I'm glad that I'm not with him. I have changed a lot as a person over the next decade. I'm firmly child free and I'm against marriage. I have my own business and happily independent. Thanks for reading if you did. This is strangely therapeutic. TLDR was 17 and was proposed to in front of his family and said yes, but when I got home I got nervous and talked to a friend about it. He saw the message and left without talking to me. I was relieved. We lived together for 3 years after having dated for a year. Had talked of marriage and things like that. It's not like I was going in blind. We had plans to go together to see my family for the Christmas and New Year holiday and were leaving the next morning. I asked the night before. Got a no. Asked if it was just sudden and nerves. No. I don't think I can marry you. Boiled down to I'm white and male and raised Catholic but Democratic liberal who moved 2,500 miles from the area and family. She was Muslim and brown, probably still is. Really no idea what happened to her, and her father wouldn't accept her marrying a white man. I left that night for the airport, and I told her I'd figure it out and be in touch. Spent the night at SFO destroyed and trying to figure it out. Cancelled her ticket and flight, so at least I had that going for me. Flew home and had to explain to my parents and sister why the girlfriend wasn't with me. That was a blast. December 27th, I was at a bar with a schoolmate and my phone rang, and it was her. Sobbing, her dad died of massive heart attack, and could I come home? Left the next morning. To get back to her it was a contentious 10 to 11 weeks. Finally had enough and moved out. Sold the ring. Deleted her info. Tired to heal. About a year later, I bumped into her in a cafe in a town over. She wanted to talk. She was sorry. Could we try again? Did I still have the ring? Blah blah blah. Basically, would I take her back? Point asked if she would wait, since I lived within walking distance, and would she mind my laptop and stuff for a few minutes. About 10 minutes later, I walked back in with a baggie, gave it to her. It was the largest dildo I could find at the sex shop that was up the street a few blocks. Told her I didn't have the ring, but I did get her something she could go fuck herself with. Point naturally, those around us looked over, and I was emboldened by this, and got more vocal. She, a minute later, decided to just walk off. I followed her, and gave her this ridiculously large 12 inches or 20 inches, or whatever size this dildo was, and insisted that she took it, because she never could figure out how to fuck me, and only ended up faking herself, so maybe the proper tools should be used, and I thrust the item, now out of the bag, into her hand, and she walked off looking shocked, and holding the item. Point I collected my things and left. I didn't go to the cafe often, I was just in the area, and decided to stop. The ex and I had never went, so I had no thought of seeing her. It was a random thing. I also didn't know the set shop was there. I happened to note it when looking for parking. It was noted because it was a corner store with a good location, and I thought that selling dildos must be good business, because rent on a good corner shop must be high. Point never looked her up on Facebook or Insta or Twitter. Went about my life. This was 16 years ago now. No idea what happened to her, or what she did with her life. The last thing I saw of her, and the last time, she was crying and walking past the cafe as I packed up, and she was holding. Why I gave her I wouldn't wish her death or harm, but have some shame and embarrassment, and I'm done with you was my clear message. It was an asshole thing to do, but there's about a billion other layers that go into it, and then her side of things. Besides being an unmitigated ass, don't regret telling her off, and even the ass part, I don't feel that bad about it. When I was in tech school for the US Air Force, I know this is very boot. 27 meters, met a woman, 25F, who had graduated basic the same time as me, and arrived to tech school for a job similar to mine, so we were part of the same indoc class in the same squadron and dorm. We started hanging out, and when we went off base we started dating casually. She was in the Yang, while I was active duty, and she wanted to leave Colorado. Was going to be stationed in Alabama. I asked her to marry me on the premise that if she wanted to split, after giving it some time, no harm no foul. She said no. We kept dating, and I would bring it up here and there in casual conversation, kind of joking, but not really asking her, whenever she mentioned wanting to leave Colorado, but always turned down. We were out on a date probably 2 months before she graduated, and I asked her more seriously again. We discussed the logistics of the move and her switching units a bit, and she said yes. Got everything figured out and her in a unit in AL, set up for when she moved. When she graduated before me, my school was longer. She went back to her old unit and finished the time she had to do there before transferring. During the next month and a half we had a long distance relationship, with me going out to see her once for a 3-day weekend. I graduated, went to my parents' place, caught a flight, married her, and we drove from Colorado to South Carolina, then on to Alabama. We have been married almost 9 years, have a kid, and a second one on the way. I did give her a real proposal and ring a year after we were married. She didn't know about it, so it worked out pretty good. Just sharing my story because people asked. Wow, okay, I wasn't sure if I was ever going to tell anyone about this, but it's late, and I'm sleep deprived. So I guess I'll just write it now, and regret it in the morning. First of all, just for some background, my mom died right when I was born. She was actually really hot, but this isn't about her. I guess that's faked up to say, but whatever. I actually grew up with my mom's family, because my dad has all sorts of emotional issues and he bailed before I was born. So you can see, my childhood was really kind of messed up. Point anyways, growing up I feel like there was always a lot of distance between me and my sister. When I was about 17 or 18 I first noticed that my sister was a hottie. Point I don't want to go into too many details about it, but basically what happened is that I accidentally found a video that she made of herself. I knew she didn't make it for me, but I thought she was so beautiful that I watched it twice. Probably would have watched it a hell of a lot more, except that like right around the time I found the video, all this crazy shit went down, and I had to leave home. My mom's family who I was staying with got in bad trouble with the law. I never talk about it, so I was totally lusting after my sister at that point. She was also having bad trouble with the law. She was actually in custody when I left home. My friend and I went to go pick her up. When I saw her that day, after seeing the video, I have to be honest, I just wanted to fuck her brains out. Looking back on it now, it's pretty messed up, but I think she had feelings for me too. She actually kissed me right after we came to get her, and it wasn't a sisterly kiss, you know? I mean, it wasn't like ridiculously sexual or anything, but it definitely wasn't sisterly. After we left, we all went to crash with my sister's friends. On the trip there, my friend sort of implied that he wanted to get with my sister, and I got a little jealous. He's a good looking guy, and even though she was my sister I just felt like he was competition. Not much else happened between us for a while, except some maybe sexy hugging. Pretty much everyone in my life at that point was wanted by the government, so we all moved around a lot. I'm not saying that I'm proud of it or anything, but it was kind of an awesome time. My friend and my sister never hooked up, I don't think. But I thought there was some serious sexual tension going on between them. It was around that time that I got really badly hurt in an accident. It was faked up. I almost died. But when I was in recovery my sister came to see me, and out of the clear blue sky she started gives me this awesome, slow passionate kiss on the lips. Sadly, although, I guess for the best, nothing ever came of it. We spent some time apart. And I started to get really religious, so I tried not to think of her that way. It was actually going well for a long time, like I was totally over her. But I have to say, like a year or so after all that stuff went down, we were out sailing, not like a date or anything romantic like that, and she was wearing like the hottest bikini I've ever faking seen, and it brought back all the old feelings. Sigh. A little while later she actually wound up with my friend from before, the sexual tension guy. I can't say I was surprised. But even after she was shacking up with my friend, there was one time we were at a party, my friend was inside, and my sister and I were outside alone. It was a really intimate moment. I think something might have happened, except that I killed the mood when I told her that Darth Vader was our father, and that I had to go face him. B met G when B's brother married G's sister. B and G were both entering their HS senior year that fall. They hit it off well, but lived 200 miles apart. Still, they exchanged letters, but B felt G got serious fast. The next summer after graduating, they both spent time at their siblings' house in Oregon, 1500 miles from home, and got even closer. Both had planned to return to G's hometown, where a university was. G did. B continued traveling, partly because G had gotten so serious. When B returned, G got even more serious and started talking marriage. B was freaking out because, while he did feel he was in love with her, he was 19 and just a freshman in college and wanted to wait. She did not, and took his hesitation as a no, found someone who reminded her of B, and married a year later, all while still in contact with B. Well, G's marriage didn't last and B never got traction on another relationship because G was continually in contact. B took a break from college, moved to Oregon, and got involved with a church, which he'd gotten away from since HS. G followed him out there to reconnect, but now she was divorced, and her mindset was party time. So, they weren't on the same page again. Over the next 10 years she married and divorced 2 more times, while remaining in contact with B. B had never gotten over G, nor gotten married. Finally, nearing 40, they both returned to their home state, having had less contact for a few years, and not initially realized it. When they did, they reconnected and maybe for the first time had a real shot at finding out what they could be. However, G had become more bitter with all she'd been through, and, while B had been patient, it was a real struggle. G had been adamant that 3 marriages was enough, and that the 2 children she had was all she wanted. B was fine with that. What he thought he wanted was her things fell apart, and he moved away, or, better said, G pushed him away. 2 years later G's sister, long divorced from B's brother, accidentally told B that G had had another baby, and, doing the math, The possibility was there, it was his. G's sister said no, it was the child of a guy G started seeing. While things were going south with B. G married that guy, had that child, and divorced a fourth time, while B never married. So B has been left to wonder, 1. Was that his child? 2. Did she push him away because she'd gotten pregnant? 3. If so, was it because she was done with him, or because she wanted to spare him? And 4. Had he agreed to marry her at 19, would he have just been husband #1 for her, or spared them both decades of bad relationships? I'm not a man. I'm not the one who proposed, though it was almost mutual, and I said yes. We were madly in love, dated a month, moved in at that point, and maybe 4 months in he proposed. We were going to just go the justice of peace as soon as it was open, but for some reason I asked to wait a little longer. Longer turned in 2 months. He went on a vacation to see his family without me. When he came back he kicked me out. Said he didn't miss me while he was gone, and that he didn't love me anymore. It was a really painful process. I still loved him, but I quietly moved my stuff out while he was at work within a day with my family's help, and then went into a deep depression. He had been engaged 2 times before. I don't know the details. Maybe that was my red flag, but I ignored it. A little later, when I was ready to try to be friends, he told me if we had gotten married he would have worked through any problems we were having. That stung. We drifted apart. I think we are still Facebook friends, and I heard a rumor, mutual friend, he was going to move to California, but honestly, I don't stalk him on Facebook. The saga kind of continues in a way. After a long while I stumbled onto my current boyfriend, with the same first name and same initial as my ex's last name. Funny point, we have been together nearly 7 years but not married. I wanted to get married before 6 years passed. Nothing huge wedding wise, but there is no movement on that front. I love him very much, and if he needs time, he can have time. But it might be my turn to propose. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Sorry it was quite befitting of the original question. Not exactly the scenario described, but a good story nonetheless. Met a girl before graduation a few months after ending a very toxic long-term relationship. She was so amazing. Just a breath of fresh air. I had never felt so loved or complete. It was just easy. We fell hard. A few years in, various things happened that contributed to her having a mental crisis, and we kind of broke up for a month or 2, but still hung out all the time. I could have moved on, most people would have, but I knew she needed me, so I stayed strong and didn't give up. I helped her crawl out of that dark cave. We learned a lot. I remember sitting in the car with her one day and saying, "I see what's going on right now, but one day I'm gonna marry you." She laughed it off, as if it wasn't ever gonna happen. A few months later, with my help, she crawled out of her mental crisis, and a few years later we got engaged. We've been together 10 years and married for 2, and we have the best relationship I could ever imagine. Not that new immature love, no, that strong as rock faking love. We are the envy of all our friends. They all use us as an example of the perfect relationship. Communication is key, people. And if you truly believe in someone, fight for them, help them, love them. I think that tough period we went through contributed to how we are now. Being with her has been the ultimate experience of my life. I always remember that night in the car. I knew I would marry her or die trying. She is the best I will ever do, even if I had 10,000 years and searched all the planets in all the galaxies of infinite space. I was living in Florida and dated a woman for 3 years. She was older than me, but worked hard and was everything I wanted. Met both her parents and they loved me. I proposed with a ring after a year and a half. She said no. She said her mom gave her a hard time about our age difference and didn't approve. Her mom basically controlled her life. I didn't know this at the time. Fast forward 6 months later. Relationship quickly deteriorated after that. I couldn't keep a job and spiraled into a deep depression pretty quick. She started to become more snappy and a bully. I was in hell. I get a call from my sister one day. My dad had suffered a heart attack and I decided to move back closer to home. I packed my stuff and told her I was leaving. She basically didn't care. She started saying things like, "I never loved you," etc. I packed my car and didn't look back. I refused to answer her calls. I now have been married to a wonderful woman for a year this May the 4th. We were together for 7 years before I proposed. I now have custody of my son, 3 dogs and 2 cats. I have a job I love, and I've never been happier. She sends me a happy birthday message every now and then. One day she called, and I begrudgingly answered. She immediately started crying about how horribly she treated me, and that she should have accepted my proposal. Apparently her new boyfriend is a drunk and abusive. I actually had said no. I had dated this girl back in my junior year of high school, and now that I look back I realize just how insane they were, and now love blind I was to see it. Anyway, we dated for about 8 months, and I thought I was pretty serious. Then at about the 9-month mark we went out on what I thought was just a regular date, except she was acting super anxious the whole time, which is normal. And finally after the dessert, she popped the question. Long story short, I was completely shocked and was totally blindsided by this. I said no, because at that point we were barely seniors in high school, only I had a job which was minimum wage, so there was no way we could afford to live together. So I said that it was just too early at that point, and that I would like for us to be in a more established place before things like marriage come up. Anyway, we dated for about 5 months after, until I decided to come see her on my day off work. And didn't call or anything beforehand. You can already tell what probably happened. Anyway, I noticed a strange car parked in her driveway that defiantly wasn't her parents'. Anyway, as soon as I walk in I immediately hear sexual noises from the back of the house, so I go back and see some guy balls fucking deep in her. So at that point, I just calmly stood there outside the door until they finished. Then while he was washing up I just walked in and just told her we were done. And ever since then life's been rather great compared. Dated 8 years. 3 weeks from the wedding she had a panic attack, called me at 4 AM, sobbing saying she couldn't go through with it. Promised she would let me come over, so we could talk things over. When I got there 30 minutes later she was gone. Flown to the US. One-way ticket. Never spoke to me again. I was devastated. Totally and utterly crushed. Her parents apologized to me. No one provided an explanation. Years later I would find out she cheated on me repeatedly while in college. About 10 months after the wedding fell apart, I quite randomly met a woman who had just lost her husband 3 years into her marriage. We dated for a bit. It felt great, but I wasn't there yet. Let's call her new girl apostrophe. A few years later, I lost my dad. First person I thought of was new girl. She was dating some hot AF French dude. I told her to break it off. We were getting married. Mind you, we had barely spoken in years. 6 months later we were engaged. Married for 5 years. We have a daughter due June 25th, 2020. Fate treated us well. She's a faking diamond point crazy. Side note. It turns out my ex-fiancé that ran away lives close by. I had no idea where she went 10+ years ago. Turns out she lives in an area 20 minutes from my place. Never ran into her before, but not even sure what I would say. To be honest, she said no, and I was rather hurt. She then dragged me off to bed, and we had epically unforgettable breakup sesh, and I left the next day. Somehow we remained super good friends, and when I moved away for work, she helped me pack for my big move. I drove alone across the country to the west coast to live, which is scary as hell, and right before I left I asked her why she said no. She said that I was too pure and kind-hearted for someone jaded like her. I didn't argue. She didn't trust easy, and I guess once you gain it, you're more family than lover, and I totally understood. When I did meet the one and got engaged, well, she did 2 things. 1, she threatened my fiancé with death if she didn't make me happy, and then somehow they became best friends, and they talk every day now. My fiancé obviously knows the history. I'm not one to keep shit secret when there is no point. And if I hadn't, my galpal would have flat out told her anyway, and then kicked my ass for not telling her myself. Then got me drunk. I literally just got off a 3-way phone call with her and my fiancé a few minutes ago. My fiancé and I were in the middle of a move when the lockdowns happened. So we're separated by 200 miles till the end of the month. But we were plotting hangouts and visits. So, I guess my life improved really. Dunno. She is married to her job and sleeping around, and is my closest friend and ally. In like word, have fun, be safe, kids are cool, don't be a beach to my cat haha. I gotta know, and turns out it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The girl who I'm not gonna name is now an ex-born star living in poverty and is sadly an addict, while I went on to meet the love of my life 6 months later. Took me 10 years to actually propose though the second time, but all it changed with our relationship was that we got to have an amazing party with all our friends and family invited, and I got to spend a crazy amount of money on a suit I would have not usually pulled the trigger on, that I still wear regularly, because it was not a typical wedding suit, it was just a really nice tailored one because I thought, why pay all this money if I'm never gonna wear it again. My two best men had the same suits made too. Mine was grey/brown, his were grey/blue and grey/green but same Scottish wool, same pattern, really beautiful 3-piece suits, and they still wear them 6 years on. Just regret that my wife gave away her wedding dress, because that really was something you don't wear again, but she wanted someone else to have it when they couldn't afford one, and that's why I love her. Was weird being invited to the wedding and seeing my wife's dress though. Did get divorced in the end, but that's another story. Not a sad one, but still another story, and I still love my now ex-wife to bits, and she feels the same, just not husband and wife love. We work in same office, we'll flirt all day all time. A problem in office cause of her they fired her. I made my maximum effort and influence I have in my office to make her stay. It worked. Our CEO actually asked sorry to her and made her continue the job point, but her ego didn't let her to continue the job. Now she said no without knowing this mindset of her. I proposed her, she said she need time, then one fine day she stopped showing up to office. Then I got to know about her decision point. Her parents started seeing some guys for marriage. This isn't ya by the way, arranged marriage. Now she said I started to like that guy. He's very mature, and you are 6 months younger than me. You are yet to settle in life. Train don't have to enough coal. Nowadays trains don't run on coal. Maybe the real old one still exists does. Universe came out of nothing. Putin made Trump win, then for 6 months it was real hard times. I used to keep thinking about her all the time. I had memories in every inch of our office with her. I'll wake up with a pain in my heart. Dunno, maybe a medical condition, but it's more like a missing feeling. Then one fine day all of a sudden I stopped thinking about her that much and started my day positive. It felt different thinking about her to start anymore. Point relationships are not real but companionship-is. All I learned from this is like a water drop on top of lotus. Look attached and not so much at the same time, so that if they leave out Tano where you wouldn't care that much. Point people change all the time. You'll change too. So I'm the one who said no. I had been with the guy for about a year and a half, and we lived together in my apartment. I was getting serious about buying a house, had a healthy down payment saved up, and had the financial security to do so. He had a high school education and absolutely zero ambition or work ethic. He was completely unwilling to do any manual labor or work any of the jobs available to non-degree holders, because it was all beneath him. But I was young, dumb, and thought I was in love. So the time is getting closer to house purchase. I viewed a half a dozen listings and we were sitting down discussing pros and cons. Because he's be moving with me, I wanted to give him some say in the process. Out of the blue he asks me to marry him. I thought he was joking and said no. Over the next week or so he persisted with it. I still said no, but asked why the sudden push to get married. I'm finally hit with the truth. He tells me that we really need to be married before I buy a house, because if you buy a house and we split, I won't get anything to show for my contribution. I was lucky if he'd contribute more than $100 a month to expenses. In my state, whatever property you obtain after getting married is joint property, and in a divorce he would have received half the value of the house. Point I ended the relationship right there. It's 15 years later, and my house and I are blissfully happy. No clue where he finally landed. He moved out of state not long after we split. My brother's first girlfriend said no when they first talked about getting married. She had shown him all the rings she was looking at and picking out places they could go and celebrate. The week my brother was going to propose, he told his best friend, who was also his roommate, and they made a plan of how to do it. The day he was gonna propose, she drives up to his work. Him and I worked at the same place, so I saw the whole thing. Completely out of the blue honks her horn, and I watch through a shop window as he goes out to meet her. I watch them talk for about 30 seconds, then I see my brother's body language change, and I hear him yell, "Why? I was gonna ask you to marry me today." I then see her driving away, visibly upset. My brother comes back in with a look of utter shock and a half grin on his face, and says Jordan just broke up with me, mildly laughing as he said it. Then I watched as reality finally kicked in, and he just broke down. Never seen him do that in the 3 decades I've known him. Over the course of several days we learned that his best friend and his girlfriend had been having an affair together for almost half a year, and waited till my brother's proposal week to end the relationship. My brother had a month where he was pretty manic and really depressed, and for several years didn't date anyone. About 3 years later we were at a bar and saw his old friend there. As he was walking by, we then saw his old girlfriend with him, and they both were married now. I had to drive my brother home that night. Fast forward to our late 20s, and he found a girl that said yes to his proposal and is the best person he could have met. When I first started dating my wife, in our final year of high school, she had a male friend who had been harboring very strong feelings for her, but had never said anything because, in his words, she was in love with him. She just didn't realize it yet. A few months after we started dating, he showed up at her summer job, got down on one knee and proposed, professing his undying love and saying that they were perfect for each other. My poor future wife didn't know what to do, so she just ran, and her coworkers stepped in and asked him to leave. He then slowly went through the crazy guy playbook, first asking her just to talk. She did, and explained that she was happy dating me, and that she was not ready to get married to anyone at age 18. He then called her a hoe, and did his best to smear us among all our mutual friends, saying that they actually had been dating, and I had waltzed in and stole her, that she was a cheater, etc. He did such a good job of this, that there are still people, 13 years later, who believe his version of events. After the smear campaign failed to break us up, he threatened suicide, and my future wife tried to talk him down, before reporting it to his parents and the authorities. His extremely religious parents were horrified and essentially grounded him so they could keep an eye on him. He went into a deep depression, flunked out of his freshman year of college, and started sleeping with a girl from his church in an attempt to make my future wife jealous. He accidentally got this girl pregnant, and they got married at 19. He deleted all social media after that. He may have been pressured by his church leaders to do so we are not really sure how he's doing anymore, other than a few high school friends that have told us that they are still married and have 3 kids now. Ultimately, I feel horrible that his late teens/early 20s turned out the way it did, but my wife truly did nothing wrong, and I was just sort of along for the ride. All I can hope is that he's doing better now. When I was 18, I started dating a girl that was 27. We worked in the same building in the city, but both lived in suburbs quite far apart. First 6 months, things are going well. She liked that I wasn't a bar person, as she had terrible luck finding quality people in bars. Smirk. One day she mentions she wants to go to a concert for a band we both liked. I knew the concert was coming up, but it was a 21+ show, so it was out of the cards for me. When she asked, I told her I couldn't go. She challenged this numerous times and I finally said, I'd love to, but they won't let me in. That's when she found out I was 18. It had never come up in all the time we were dating. She eventually got over it, and we continued dating. A few months later, during pillow talk, she starts saying things like, "You're the kind of person I can see spending the rest of my life with," and hinting at marriage. This went on for a couple months with me changing topic. I'm freaking out because I'm 18 and this girl wants to clip my wings. She's at the age of looking for a permanent mate, and I'm just not ready. I decide to do the right thing and end the relationship. She would drive me home from the office sometimes in an hour-long commute, and this is when I stupidly try to break things off. She's quite upset, and it was a painful car ride home. I get out of the car and try to calm her down, and she proceeds to hit me with the car. I'm not severe injured, but I sure felt it for a few days. She then proceeded to try to bed down my best friend at the time, other friends, etc. Of course she called me a few times to tell me she had been cheating on me with people she met from the bar. I'm suspicious my supposed best friend did sleep with her last I heard. She was swelling the drain of alcoholism and moved out of state. Never heard from her again. Dated a woman that was about 7 years older than I was, 2002 till 2004. Fell in love, helped raise her kids, took care of things for her. She had a previous marriage that went south, and after a year and a half, I asked her to marry me. She said no, I can't do that again. It's a curse. I want us to stay the way we are. I was hurt, but respected that point. Of course, I find out through her job and friends that she did not want to really settle down, and to her, I was cool, sincere, honest, and would do anything for her and her kids. She would go out till the sun came up and start getting mad at me for accusing her of cheating. I didn't say a word about it. She left her Yahoo Messenger open and/or her talking about giving these guys blue jobs, jobs, the works. I asked her about it, said it was harmless flirting. Of course did not want to see the truth. She got transferred to another store and we had to spend time apart. While there, she experienced different things. First time with a woman, a few guys. I finally just gave up. This was after she said she loved me, but not in love with me. Went to visit her and her kids and saw these letters from a prison. Come to find out she met a guy through a pen pal deal and fell in love. This was 4 months after we broke up, and 2 months after, she married the dude. Whist in prison. For a long time, I felt worthless, sat, refused to date, was just scared, and felt like a total failure. Fast forward 8 years later while in college, met the most amazing woman, and we just celebrated 4 years of marriage. And 8 years together. Things get better. Don't let one person ruin your self-worth. Male, female, been rejected and feel like you're no good. Hold on and love yourself. Love finds those who love themselves. I'm a female who said no, so hopefully I can answer in this thread. I think we'd only been dating about 3 weeks the first time he proposed. We'd know each other for a little bit longer, just as casual friends. He lived in a different city to mine, about 90 minutes away, so as casual friends, we mostly spoke on the phone. It is how we met actually. I worked in a tech support call center and he worked for a company that needs to use our tech support. Why did I say no? After all, my mum knew the very day she met my dad that she wanted to marry him, and they have been happily married for decades and decades. I said no because he was too intense. I felt smothered and suffocated by the intensity. It was all too much too soon. We still live in different cities and I truly believe that you don't know someone until you have lived with them. When you are dating and even staying over at nights, you still put on your best behavior. Until you live with someone, you haven't negotiated the financial responsibilities. Money issues is usually the #1 reason why couples break up. What happened after that? We continued on for about another 6 months, but my no had damaged the relationship and worse, it had damaged the friendship we had before we started dating. He was the sweetest guy, but talk about marriage and babies after 3 weeks of dating, and probably 6 weeks of friendship before that. The no was always there hovering above us. He was still hurt by it, although he tried not to show it, and I failed to make him understand that I just felt it was too much too soon. I'm romantic enough to want to only marry once, so I want to be as sure as I can. I could also tell that, even though I had said no before, he still wanted to ask again and again. It was scary to be in that position of being able to manipulate a person's emotions with just one word. I knew he would be so happy if I said yes, but I couldn't. The harsher beach in me also questioned why someone would be so desperately wanting to marry after such a short time. Did he think he would not find someone else later on, so proposed to the one you're with? After 6 months, I ended the relationship. We couldn't get past the first no, and after about another 6 months, started seeing another guy. We've been seeing each other for years and years, so long that people ask when are we getting married. I don't think we ever will. We are too opposite, so I think we would clash if we were married and living together. I'm a night owl, he is an early bird. I'm neat and tidy, he is more casual. I read somewhere that opposites attract, like in science with magnets, but also the thing that attracted you to that person is also the thing that may eventually drive you apart. I also cherish my independence. Having said that, things would be so much cheaper if we did marry and live together. The cost of two places is expensive. But if that is the only reason to get it, probably best we didn't. Point in short. Unless it is because you are too young and want more life experience or to save up money for house deposits, etc. I think it is hard for a relationship to recover from a proposal no. It will always be hovering in your minds, and it will probably taint the relationship. Sure, it is not impossible for people to have a great relationship afterwards, but that is only because both people have acknowledged that the timing wasn't right. Answering for my father-in-law, Dennis was stationed at Fort Dix. He was just some lowly lieutenant, not of any import, and, frankly, not that great looking a guy. But he walked into the O Club and he saw her sitting there at the bar. At the time, California 1960, they had shrimp cocktail on special every week, and it brought the young ladies from nearby in. Roberta was being chatted up at the bar by some major. Dennis, with more balls than brains, walked up and just interrupted them. Roberta apparently wasn't enjoying her conversation with the major, and she gladly accepted his invitation to dance. They saw each other off and on. Then they started courting and seriously dating. Finally, the big day came. Dennis asked her to marry him. She said no. A few weeks later, she moved down to DC. She sent Dennis a Dear John letter. He claims to this day that he never received it. He drove down to DC, sought her out, and asked her again. She said no. Roberta then went to Paris at the invitation of an old beau. While she was there, she realized she made a terrible mistake. She came back, met up with Dennis, and they were married for 50 years before Roberta, my mother-in-law, succumbed to cancer a few years ago. They were hopelessly devoted to one another. She was also the absolute best mother-in-law a guy could have. I miss her terribly. Abby and I met September 2017. I fell in love with her whimsical spirit, positive attitude, and encouragement of anything I wanted to do. All of these were things I had never experienced in a woman, and were things I had always looked for. I made a hindsight mistake and proposed just over a month later, October 21st. Fun fact, everyone thought we were the perfect couple, Barbie and Ken if you will. She said yes, glowingly. Thanksgiving, her and I had an absolutely petty argument and broke up for like 5 days. We got back together and everything was perfect. We continued wedding planning, booked a venue, she got a dress, I asked all of my groomsmen, etc. April 7, 10ish, she started getting super weird, distant, cold, phone always went with her to the bathroom, shower, etc. I asked her about it, and there was always a reason. I never had any reason to doubt her for cheating or anything of that nature, so I believed her. April 14th, she throws me a birthday party at our apartment for our families. I get a weird vibe, but ignore it, because I was stressed out anyway from work. April 17th, my day. One of the first nice days of the year last year. I take a half day from work, she was off that day. She meets me at my work, only a few miles from our apartment. We get home. I tell her I will change her oil, and that I wanted to change my spark plugs, slightly long job on my old car, and my oil. I ask her to come hang out outside with me, with Kuma, my Shiba Inu. She declines, and says she'd rather hang out inside. My feelings are slightly hurt. It takes me until 7:30 to 8 o'clock. I come back inside, clean up, etc. We eat dinner, she goes to bed. Again, I've had nothing to believe that she's cheating, so I don't go looking. My birthday, 4/17, was on a Tuesday. By Thursday we've had super petty little fights that should been like 2 minutes. Okay, they are done, and instead they got blown into these huge ordeals. By Friday/Saturday, they've turned into blown out fights, where I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on, and of course end up losing my temper, which is then turned on me. Prior to all of this, I had been working for Coca-Cola as a mechanic. I made $78k in 8 months. My tax return was huge point because I was caring. I encouraged her to leave every job she started and wasn't happy with. That led to her job hopping and me mistakenly encouraging it because I wanted her to be happy. It put an enormous amount of financial stress on me, and rather than express it to her, I bottled it up and became frustrated. I ended up spending my entire tax return catching up her and I's bills, paying a down payment on a $4K washer and dryer, and paying 3 months of our rent. Weeks later was my birthday ordeal, and by the 21st, which was a Saturday, she was telling me to get out. My lease on my apartment had expired the previous November, and I moved in with her, whose lease had practically just begun. Her giving me the boot left me homeless. My best friend took me in for a month until I found an opportune living situation with another friend of mine who had a house in Newtown and needed a roommate to afford it. To keep that situation short, he wasn't using the $600 MO I was giving him for rent to actually pay the rent and got us evicted. Yay life. In that time, I had started dating someone named Erin. Erin I had been dating for a whole month when she let me move in with her as an obvious temporary deal because she understood what happened. Stayed there for like 3 weeks. In that time period I was both laid off, Rambo raps, and started at another job, Son Signs, which caused a huge strain on her and I's relationship. Probs for the best, her and I were polar opposites, and looking back, probably toxic to each other. A good friend of mine and I, Anthony, started talking and organically discovered that his roommate had just moved out and he was looking for another. I moved my junk out of Erin's and into his place. Erin and I had a very mature conversation that we just weren't right for each other because of our place in life. During Erin and I's relationship, Abby had contacted me 3 times for seemingly arbitrary things, and I ignored her because duh, relationship. When Erin and I split, the next day I contacted Abby to see what the deal was. She then told me that she had thought about me ever since we split, etc etc. Insert romance movie here. We talked for a day before she told me, "You wouldn't want me anymore, I'm a wreck." After several hours, I drug it out of her that she was pregnant. Several days of us discussing past, and the more I was told, the more I learned that baby daddy wasn't going to be a part of this. I, being the dumbass who loved a person who was a facade, decided to take care of both her and this barely formed fetus. Hardly anyone even knew she was pregnant. So, we just told everyone it was mine to save her name and not make everyone ask questions. This was December 1st. 2018. She moved in with Anthony and I, and we began searching for our own place. We found a cute townhome and put down a deposit. Well, to keep the ending short, she did the exact same thing she had done in April. In February, the last 10 days we were together, she went entirely cold, and everything became an extraordinarily large fight. Then, one day, she up and said she was done. The very next day I tried to tell her that I'd take over the townhouse we had signed on, and she said she was keeping it, claiming she now has extra income coming in. She then told me that she had furniture being delivered there. I told her that I wanted my half of the deposit back, and that if she was having furniture delivered, she had no excuse not to have my money. She told me that she didn't pay for the furniture. That was pretty much the last contact we had, and she refuses to pay me back my half of the deposit. She has my number blocked, and I'm blocked on all social media. She also blocked every one of my friends, so I had no way to even contact her to get my money. The whole thing left my spirit pretty faked. I've now been dating someone for over a year, and honestly don't know if I'll ever feel the same way about another woman as I did about a bee. The problem with that being, the person I fell in love with was an entire facade, a textbook narcissist who became whatever I wanted. She ended up getting back together with baby daddy for like 2 weeks before he kicked her out. As far as I know, the baby is healthy, and she started dating some guy that everyone has told me looks like a heroin addict. Warning, long, wow, not quite sure how to respond to this. Well, it's not really my story to tell, but I felt compelled to answer the question anyway. My dad started dating my mom when I was 4 years old. I don't remember life without him. Needless to say, he's not my biological father. Bo dad was an abusive alcoholic. I don't really know the full story there, partly because I'm not interested in knowing, but I think he was someone my mom got with, and she got pregnant, unplanned. I don't even know the story behind this, but I know they were married at some point. My guess is that this occurred after she was pregnant. Anyway, eventually the marriage was annulled. My mom moved with me, age 2, to another state, and moved in with her father and brother. My grandpa died of lung cancer when I was 4. The same year my mom started dating my dad. As I said before, I don't have any memories of life before my dad was in the picture. He and my mom dated 4 years, then married when I was in 5th grade. He officially adopted me around the same time. It's odd looking back, but I remember at the time, I was opposed to the whole thing. I think I was just afraid of change. He'd been my dad my whole life, really, but I never referred to him as dad. I can still remember the awkward transition period, being plied by my mom to call him dad, him saying it's okay, and to do whatever I was comfortable with. I always thought of him as a father figure, but never actually called him dad, until after he married my mom. I just had this weird feeling, like I didn't have a dad, and even though I loved him, it was weird. I didn't like feeling forced to give him a title, based on what my mom said. Point anyway, to cut a long story short, not too long after, though it felt like an eternity to me, in my young life, my parents were suddenly divorcing. The relationship had been contentious for some time. A lot of arguments and animosity. I do remember my dad taking the high ground 9 times out of 10. Even if he was clearly in the right, he would resign himself and let my mom win, just so the argument would end. I found out that they'd been in marriage counseling. The idea was they'd each see the same counselor in one-on-one sessions before eventually having group sessions. My mom stopped going to the sessions and didn't tell my dad. He didn't know and kept going alone, thinking eventually they'd meet together, wanting to save the marriage. Knowing this still infuriates me to this day. Not only for my mom being a total coward and piece of shit, but what kind of faking counselor would allow this? Anyone with even a shred of morality would not be able to go on, knowing full well they were listening to a man's most intimate emotions and concerns, his hopes of reconciling with his wife, knowing full well that she had walked away and he didn't even know it yet. Yet being happy to continue taking money to hear his grievances. It makes my blood boil to this day. Counselors are supposed to faking help people. That as whole deserves their license revoked for that alone. But I digress. Anyway, my parents divorced when I was 15. I suddenly found myself in a completely new setting. I was always insecure and self-loathing. My mother was a narcissist, as will continue to become clear. But the one thing I always banked on was the path set before me. I grew up in the same house, with the same group of peers. Even though most of them were assholes, I was at least secure in the knowledge that I'd graduate from a particular high school and go to a particular college. Instead, I was yanked out and moved to a new school 100 miles away, not even midway through sophomore year. And whilst I tried to adapt to living in a 2-bedroom apartment with my mother, with whom I had a contentious relationship at best, less than 2 months in, I was introduced to someone new. Someone who moved in with us shortly thereafter. Someone who would become my stepfather. Someone who would go on to abuse me. Someone who my mom is still married to this day, despite a brief period where a divorce seemed imminent. During that time, I supported her, we talked a lot. I felt for the first time in years that it was possible to reconcile our relationship. Then I found out they were back together. Meanwhile, my dad, who I got to see only a few times a year after the divorce, remains like a best friend. I have more in common with him than anyone else. At the time of the divorce, I was 15. If I'd had any say whatsoever, I would have asked to live with him. I didn't. The judge just decided arbitrarily, without even consulting me, that my mom was the way to go. Simply because we share the same blood. It has been very hard, over the years, to reconcile the abuses and make sense of it all. Meanwhile, I have come to learn more about my dad. I asked him once, years ago, when I was young and in love, but wary, what his experiences were at my age. It was then that I found out he'd been engaged before, which came as a shock. He proposed to a young woman he went to college with. He said they were very much in love. Sometime later, for whatever reason, she broke their engagement. He was heartbroken. I believe that young woman and my mother were the major loves of my dad's life. It sickens me to know what my mom did. I'm always hoping for my dad to meet someone and find his happiness. He deserves it more than anyone I know. I remember at the time feeling so guilty, thinking he could have married that girl and gone on and had biological children and a happy life. Instead he met my mom and went through so much suffering. Then I remember what he said to me so many times over the years, beginning with the divorce and many times after, when I'd see him. I have no regrets, because now I have you as a daughter. It brings a tear to my eye to remember. When I was told of the pending divorce, I was sat on the living room couch, a young teen, riddled with hormones, confused and emotional. My dad stood in the doorway, said I'm sorry, tears in his eyes. I'd never once seen him cry before. He walked out and shut the door behind him. I burst into tears. My mom sat nearby, then coldly chastised me and told me to calm down. It's horrible, but I'll never forget it. Not me but my dad. My parents were close to another couple when they were married. That couple had a kid a few years older than me, Travis. I was effectively an only child, so I looked up to him like an older brother. Eventually my parents divorced and Travis's dad died of cancer. My dad fell hard for Travis's mom and they ended up dating. My dad ended up proposing after a while, but she wasn't ready. It was still only a year or two after Travis's father died, and to be honest, I don't think she was in love with my dad. He didn't show it, but man, I could tell he was heartbroken over it. We didn't hear from them at all for about 8 months. Suddenly she calls my dad up, begging him to marry her. She'd been diagnosed with terminal cancer as well, and didn't know what was going to happen to Travis. Only time I ever saw my dad cry is when he was thinking about that decision. But he was already a single father in his 60s. After a few days, he called her back sobbing and told her he couldn't do it. I know he never forgave himself for it too, because Travis's dad was his best friend. Last time I ever saw Travis was at his mom's funeral. I think he ended up living with a great aunt or something. I still think about him all the time and wonder where his life led him to. My dad ended up getting cancer about 3 years later and passed away before I was 14. Part of me really wishes I had an older brother in my life that knew what I was going through. The other part of me wonders what that would have done to him. Poor kid would have started thinking he was Dr. Manhattan. We were not formally engaged, but we started the process of moving together, and as she was a lawyer, still is, actually, according to her, the difference between living together and marriage is just a piece of paper. I have moved to a new apartment, and I asked her to move with me. She agreed. I talked to her parents to communicate the news. She was 26 back then, so technically there was no need to ask for their permission, just to communicate our decision. They were sad as she was their only daughter and was leaving home without being officially married, but they agreed after all, because they really liked me and because they know we had plans to marry. One day. We barely spent a month together. The relationship started to deteriorate. She always blamed me because she couldn't feel that I really wanted us to be together, and I blamed her because I didn't like how she managed to turn every situation into something that I felt guilty, and how she always made me feel like I'm the wrong one. During a discussion. We spent almost 2 months in a separation process, which was pretty much like hell. I started to feel depressed and got to a point where I couldn't work anymore. I had no focus and constantly lacked concentration. I feel bad reading all those. I have a new partner and she's my best friend because she was my best friend at that time. She was the first one I ran when I needed to tell any good news, and she was the one I had chosen to build a life with. I feel like she was the partner for my life, and losing her makes me feel like I can never get another relationship with a partner in the same way as I felt that she was my partner back in the day. I'm not totally over her. Everything happened around 6 months ago, but I hope I can forget her someday. My parents' story. My mom has horrible ADHD and will miss what you say unless you have her complete focus. My dad is pretty quiet/awkward about emotions and whatnot. My parents met when they were 7 and 9 years old. They were best friends He was friends with her brother and 4 sisters, worked for my grandparents, the whole 9 yards. The first time my dad asked my mom to marry him, I think she was 14 or 15. She was dating someone else and had just gotten my dad's name tattooed on her back. He was pissed about the tattoo, so she was so busy panicking about how mad he was and trying to figure out if a kitchen counter tattoo was easier to remove, she completely missed it. The second time he proposed, she was 16, almost 17. My dad had been homeless for a year or so and had just signed to join the Navy. He was going to boot camp in a few weeks. So she was a mess trying to figure out he needed, and she was collect up all his stuff up. She'd just gone and raided my dad's garage for whatever was left of my dad's belongings. So she was distracted, completely missed the proposal again. The third and final time my dad proposed to her. He was leaving for boot camp very soon. She had just turned 17. He took her for a drive, and when things got quiet he proposed again. My mom jumped on him, and he ran into the bushes. They got married when he had 2 weeks off in between boot camp and training and have been married 22 years now. I met her over a decade ago through my buddy's girlfriend one night at a party. At that moment I knew I wanted to be with her, so on I went with the months-long courting process. Getting to know her, going on dates, hanging out with our mutual friends, so on and so on. Eventually we become exclusive, and that was pretty awesome. We dated living on our own separately for about 6 months when she hinted that maybe we should get a place together. I jumped at the idea. About 8 months into us living together, over a year exclusively and almost 2 years of knowing each other, I felt it was time to propose. It wasn't like we'd never talked about this idea before, so I knew that she was interested in it. Got off of work one day early and had been banking up some extra cash. Walked into a jeweler's and explained what I was wanting to do. One $2,000 purchase later, I was on my way home to pop the question. Nervous, sweaty, anxious, I walk in the door of our apartment. She comes running out of the room, hugging up on me and kissing. Just pure excitement. Then I dropped to one knee, pulled the ring out, flipped the lid open, and then, wait, what is this? This isn't an engagement ring, is it? Because I'm definitely not ready for that. My heart sank further than I ever thought imaginable. Here I was on one knee, staring through this woman. The woman I loved so deeply. The woman who would tell me about how our wedding was going to be so perfect. The woman who told me she couldn't see herself with anyone else ever. I came back to and looked up at her. No words came out. I was saying them, but my mouth wasn't moving. I could feel my eyes filling with tears, and I'm sure she could see them. But if this is a gift, I'm totally okay with that. It's so pretty. How much was this, babe? I'll let her wear the ring. We eventually got it resized to fit perfectly, and 6 months later caught her sleeping with some random dude. Then I found a shoebox in our closet I had never seen before that was filled with rings, necklaces, earrings, pearls, and other fine and expensive jewelry. When confronted, she was honest that all of that jewelry was from men before me. All men who had proposed, like I did. Told her to keep the ring and left. Not much has changed with me other than age and wisdom. She eventually married a wealthy farmer who's 40ish years older than both of us. Unclear if this qualifies due to the alternative perspectives, but it seems similar to what is being posted, so here goes. This is a tad long, please bear with me. I met her at work. She was in a similar technical job, but a different section. This was the best job I've ever had, and I was doing quite well with a very popular computer company. This was back in the 90s, and I have had a couple of significant relationships, 2 to 3 years, but had not found the one. Several weeks of break time and a couple of casual interactions impressed me, and she was amazing. Scary smart, and sexy as anyone I'd ever met, a supernova smile, and the most satisfying partner I have had, to this day. We dated for probably 6 to 9 months, after I posed this question to her, while headed outside on a break. I want you to know that no is really an okay answer, but I would really like to take you to dinner. Her yes felt like a significant life event. She was a gambler, card player, and a bit of a hustler. Good pool player too, but didn't have the vision for the game according to her. Though she avoided wearing glasses, she began to teach me some game theory and the math involved in poker, specifically Texas Hold'em, which was very big at the turn of the century. I began to go with her and joined in playing some local private games. It was pretty exciting to walk into a game with thousands of dollars on the table. I was never as successful as she was, but did okay, until I realized any money was better spent for her skills. Her roommate got into a relationship and I lobbied for her to move in with me as her lease ended. We were at about a year together. We had our ups and downs, and I was deeply in love. She was reluctant, as I lived about an hour out of town on about 3 acres near a lake. She was a city girl and had always relied on public transportation, so I bought her a car and she moved in. When I broached the subject of marriage, our discussions revealed that neither of us really believed in the institution, due to the general social failure indicated by the divorce rate, like 86%, and both our parents had divorced. She was also a divorcee, while I had never pulled the trigger before. I was never happier, but in retrospect, the late hours of regular poker games were starting to interfere with my job. I had really good friends confronting me about this, but my denial was fully active. I was head over heels with this very capable woman and had started bankrolling her. This was an equitable stake horse split, and she increased the number of games as a dealer, which meant less risk and a second job essentially. Her living with me rent-free and not contributing to bills never really entered my mind. She also expressed feelings for me, and since marriage wasn't our preferred contract, we agreed that, if we could get pregnant, we would commit for 21 years together. This occurred at a family event where my nephew won an athletic competition with his team, and I was feeling on top of the world. My entire family was pleased that I was so happy in this relationship, and all was well. We were into year 2 by now, and more information about history was coming forth about tragic incidents early in life that were preventing our goal to have a child. She had experienced physical trauma as a preteen that resulted in fertility specialist visits, and months later confirmed that we were not likely going to conceive. She bailed out, and within a few months, married a much older man that she was seeing previous to our meeting. I got drunk for a year, lost my job and my house. She was divorced within 18 months and moved to a locale where she began dealing poker for a living. After being there a few years, she got married again and has been ever since. It took a few years, but I have had a good job for 13 years now. Have had one significant relationship since. That was long distance. Worked for about 2 years before we called it quits. I have accepted that I will not find another supernova smile, and given the trauma that resulted, I guess that is best. My grandmother rejected her second husband's proposal 7 times before finally accepting on the 8th. A little backstory. My nana has 3 children, one being my father, from her first marriage. That man had some untreated mental illnesses with some substance abuse and was violent towards my grandmother and her children. After years and years of abuse, she took her children and left for a better life. After that, she worked multiple jobs to keep her family afloat. One of these jobs was as a secretary at an engineering firm. Her boss, we shall call him Greg, took an immense interest in this young, smart, hardworking and determined woman. They lived relatively close in proximity to each other and got closer over the years. By this time, Greg was head over heels for my nana and asked her to marry him 7 times. Each time she said no. She is a fiercely independent woman and believed that she needed to raise her kids on her own with no help for anyone. And she did a damn good job. Once her children were older, she finally decided to marry the kind, loving, teddy bear of a man that was smitten with her. He proceeded to treat my nana like the queen she is and welcomed her children as his own. He was the first real father that my dad and his siblings ever had, and my dad still tells stories of this goofy and lovable man. He was also a great grandfather to my aunt's young children at the time, and my cousins looked up to him. After many happy years, Greg sadly passed away, but his memory will always live on. More recently, my oldest cousin, the one who was close to Greg, just got married. In the ceremony they used a Bible verse that was in Nana and Greg's wedding ceremony. 1 Corinthians 13. I thought that was a sweet thing to share too. Apologies for formatting, I'm on mobile. My dad apparently asked a woman to marry him, and she said no. I think he still feels heartbroken about it. He took a long time away from dating before meeting my mom, who was attending the gate at his place of work. He only knew what she sounded like as they could only communicate over phone, and he asked her out. She was a single mother of 3 at the time. They got along great and got married and started talking about having another baby. That would be me. Nowadays it feels like they haven't had romance in their relationship since I was like 5. I didn't have a good childhood with them as my parents. Half their parenting skills, half because they just didn't get along very well. They rarely had huge arguments, but it just felt like they resented each other like an old married couple despite not being married that long. Now, however, as an adult I can see they do love each other. They just suck at communication and building each other up. I told my dad that every time we are alone, they always complain about each other to me and never have anything good to say, and that's been the case my whole life. I think that resonated with him because my mom says he's being sweeter and even sent her a love letter. I even gave my mom romance advice, so that was weird. I think it'll probably get better from here on out. He's well off in his at-home office job, though struggling in this economy, has a pretty puppy and his own house with my mom and her 2 cats, works on projects often and only struggles with his shitty bosses. But, hey, what can ya do? I think he just needs a counselor, really, to help with coping mechanisms, but that's another fight for another day. My baby's father had asked his ex-girlfriend, before me, to marry him. He bought a serenade to her. She said no, she wanted time to think about it. Then a week later she was dating someone else. Now fast forward to when we were dating. He always talked about settling down and having kids/family. I was on the same page as him. We are 7 years apart. I got pregnant soon after. He ended up giving me a promise ring. I always talked about marriage cause that's what I wanted. He then told me to stop talking about marriage because it felt like I was pressuring him, so okay, I stopped talking about it. Not going to lie, I was hurt. I felt like he shut me down, but I didn't tell him how I felt. After my son was born he was talking about marriage and saying he actually is planning to asking me. But then when we had a little breakups he would always bring up that he was planning to ask me and send pictures of the engagement ring. And soon as we get back together he would never talk about marriage or anything. But it's always when we break up he would then say he wants to get married. I feel that because his ex-girlfriend said no it made him so insecure. We broke up because I was ready to take the next step, and why are we dating if married isn't the step? I get that it takes time to heal, but we created a family, but I know no child can force parents to be together. I also was thinking of asking him to marry me, but there's moments where I get clues that he isn't ready to get married, especially because our relationship was toxic. Obligatory not me. Some friends of mine they had dated on and off for 6 years. She broke up with him a couple of times for different reasons. Didn't want to do long distance, wasn't sure about the relationship / another guy was wooing her, and she didn't want to cheat, so she broke it off. He broke up with her once, I don't remember the reason. Eventually they would get back together. He was very patient and would do grand gestures to get her back. She decided she didn't want to lose him and reached out, and they got back together. They had been together with no breakups for a while and were going to be graduating university in 6 months when he proposed. She said I'm not sure and basically avoided the topic for 6 months. She had a hard time making decisions. He kept asking about it because they were coming up to graduation and it was a crossroads. She was going back to her state and he needed to decide what he was doing. If he was going to go back to his parents who lived in another country, or if he would try to get a job in her city. In the end I think the fact that she couldn't say yes or no, or even maybe later, as well as some other factors led him to break it off with her. He started dating someone else about 5 months after breaking it off with her, and they got married 2 years after that. I think she's still single, but I've lost contact with her. He's really happy in his relationship. He's been married for a little over 4 years and they are going to start trying for a baby soon. TLDR, she said no, and it was the best thing that could have happened to us. To my surprise, after she did, my adult life really began. It's been nothing but improved since, and I'm grateful to her for being honest with me. This was about 9ish years ago, and we were together for just shy of 7 years. We loved each other, but we were not kind, and it was a textbook toxic relationship for a lot of reasons. The longer version, we were both verbally abusive, bitter, and pretty negative with each other for all of those 7 years. In hindsight, we should have split up after month 1, but we were inseparable and lazy/comfortable. Don't get me wrong, there were a ton of good times and we cared about each other, but there were some real hard lessons we just hadn't learned about what a healthy relationship looks like. I'm sure that, if we had stayed together, the abuse would have escalated, and I'm still ashamed of my part in that more than a decade removed from it. I should note that I was no prize during this time. I moved back in with my parents, suffered from depression and anxiety that wasn't treated, and was generally in a dark place the entire time. The turning point was, I think, when I started going to therapy and got on medication for my mental illness. She was a huge factor in me seeking help, and I will always be thankful for that. Thanks to this change, I was going back to school with renewed energy and focus, found a good student gig after 3 years of on/off unemployment, and was moving back out of my parents' house. The only thing that wasn't great was our relationship. Over the years, when we talked about the future, I was never a character in her plans, and it really brought me down. I knew I wanted someone who wanted a partner. I knew deep down that she was going to say no. In fact, her response to my proposal was literally, "Do you even know me at all?" It was as terrible as it sounds. I told her to keep the ring anyway for the next week or so. I took it really hard, but a feeling of relief started to take its place. She had finally said out loud what we both knew already. We had different visions of the future and what we wanted to do with our lives. We stayed together for a few weeks, tried to make it work, perhaps out of habit more than anything else, but eventually split amicably. She inherited our mutual friends and I moved on. Based on how that group regarded me, I have to assume that amicable parting didn't last for her for very long, but I don't hold any grudges. It was the crossroads moment of my adult life. We haven't spoken for almost 7 or 8 years now, but I hear she's doing well, which I'm glad for. Now I'm in my mid-30s and married to the love of my life, who did say yes, but it took another 3ish year failed relationship with a bonus failed engagement for me to get there. My partner and I are on year 3 of our marriage this month, and it's been the best time of my life. We are fortunate to have good careers, shared plans, and we treat each other with a level of respect and kindness that I wish I had extended to every partner I had before, but those were hard-learned lessons for me. Very relates to this thread, but I'll take a jab at it. I'm a lady, and was proposed to and said no. My ex was my high school sweetheart. We were together for 5 years and lived together. I had a lot of childhood trauma from my parents' divorce, and had a theory about how relationships are: perseverance, commitment to one another is all you need, just don't be selfish, blah blah blah. My intuition told me it wouldn't work, but I was young and ignored it. I helped him customize the ring I wanted and everything. I knew I wasn't in love, but to me at the time unwavering commitment equals love. Fast forward to a week before Christmas, he planned this extravagant proposal at a lights festival. My whole family was invited by him, and there was an audience. We walk around the pathway, and there's a sign saying, "Marry me misery." I internally panic, but have to keep my cool, because my friend is recording everything. I said yes, because of the audience, but I was panicking. I remember being so shocked that the man I had known so well took my worst nightmare and turned it into a proposal. I'm very private and shy. In hindsight, I realize the universe set it up that way for me because it was not meant to be on my life path. I was just so young and scared I dug a deep hole for myself. I remember getting home and thinking, wow, I need to kill myself, because it was so clear to me I couldn't stay, but I was terrified. Now everything's cool. I have a baby and he's engaged. If you see this, I'm so sorry, Nick. Got engaged out of high school. We dated for another 2 years, and it didn't work out. I was always scared of proposal rejection. After that point, I dated another girl that I've liked for forever for 3 years, and finally had decided to push past my fear and ask her to marry me. I was overjoyed when she happily said yes. She didn't believe me at first, or thought I was joking. She knew I was scared of the whole proposal thing, and it seemed to catch her off guard. I had planned to call my parents when we got him, but on the drive she asked me to wait. We got home, and she broke down in tears. She had been having an affair, and while I said I still wanted to keep the engagement, she said she wanted to better herself first. It only lasted a couple of weeks before she said she wanted to take some time to herself and figure out what she wanted. She ended up going on a few dates with that same guy. After a few months of nothing more than short conversations, our talks grew deeper again, and we decided that we wanted to give it another try. We spent another year together slowly getting better, but the idea of marriage came with some uneasiness. We went on a trip to Colorado together, and I had packed the ring with me just in case. She found it while looking for a phone charger, and things got really intense really fast. I think she thought I was planning on asking her on the trip, and she still wasn't sure about it. I went to my best friend for advice on it, and he was pretty helpful. I really opened up to him. Turns out he was using everything I told him against me and going straight to her to make it seem like I was complaining about our relationship. It turns out he had been gunning for her since they met and was willing to do everything he could to get her. He used the cracks in our relationship to pull us apart further, and later got the girl. I hope this doesn't come across as a pity party. The point I'm trying to make is that there is always tension if you decide to stay together after a failed proposal. Some couples can get through it. We couldn't. Betrayal said yes, then said no, because she was having an affair. Dated for another year until she left with best friend. Not the guy, but my wife's ex of 8 years bought her an unsized ring at an antique store after her begging for marriage for 6 years. The ring was gilded in fake silver and the opal was fake. He cried over the fake ring and threw a fit and couldn't be consoled over it. I offered to help him. He was a friend, and he declined. Then he tried to immediately get her a Phantom wedding ring, Madoka or Sailor Moon, instead. Vowed to save up money to fix the mistake, then turned around to spend the money on anime figures and video games instead of a new ring. During this time, she realized what an abusive idiot he'd been, hiding his misogyny in Jehovah's Witness, blaming her for his loss of faith, gaslighting her into comforting him if she was upset about anything, and realized she had feelings for me after a long friendship. We dated and were an amazing fit. She's my soulmate. Guy is out of our lives. He was homophobic too. We are proud of our identities and picked out matching wedding rings together. Put our plans on hold, but she's already told me she can't wait to marry me. Once work starts up, I'm taking her out to dinner somewhere she loves, and I can't wait for her to say yes. Been dating for 5 years now. He asked me to marry him about 3 years into the relationship. I said not yet. I wanted to make sure I was positive and afraid of feeling trapped. Fast forward 6 months/ 1 year-ish, and we go on a break. I hung out with a guy I knew, but never even held his hand, etc. But I did like him. He starts hanging out with his best friend's niece who is 5 years younger with him. We were 24 then. I stopped hanging out with the guy, begged him to get back together. It took a while to unbreak his heart. I hurt him with that bad. So now we are finally ready to really get married. Got our wiggles out, etc. We purchased our first home together. Seriously planning a wedding. Invited all family. I'm stocking up on baby stuff to have children soon. 1 month before our wedding, as I pick him up to drive together 3 hours away to my cousin's funeral, he reveals a paternity test from the mail. His DNA was already in the system as he has a 7-year-old daughter, whom I love by the way, and get along wonderfully with her mom. Turns out he has an 11-month son with her. The son that I was so excited to give him. Finally. My blood is boiling. Most emotional roller coaster funeral ever, by the way. Complete shock. World is crumbling. You weren't going to bother to tell me you slept with her? Before we purchase a home together? Before I invite our family to our wedding? I asked 100 times if you slept with her, and you flat out lied. Anyway, cancelled the wedding date and instead ended up having a 1-year-old birthday party at our home for his new son on my wedding date. My baby room is now Nathaniel's room. Side note, I actually really like his mom. And I love Nathaniel. First thing I said when I met him. But man, that was the hardest few months of my life. What a tough lesson of acceptance. She also has a 6-year-old daughter. They are mirror images. Both had kids very young in teens. A part of me feels like I'm in the way. Like I should let them be together. The girls love each other so much and have been only children for so long. They love having a sibling their age. Asked a girl at 18 if she wanted to marry me. She said yes. Culturally we were very different. She is a Turk who was finding her faith. I was a Catholic whose faith was slipping fast. I'm also a white American Jude point, so I learned the language from hanging out with her dad. She had this internship a ways north, and I'd drive her up, hang out with her dad, and learn Turkish. Point on the other hand, the religious and cultural differences were huge and her mother hated me. After about 2 years we sat down and had a fairly mature conversation about it. She walked away and went to her 4-year. I sat there, heartbroken. Also, soon to be on my way to a 4-year, first and last time I felt true romantic heartbreak. It was awful. We got back together for about 2 weeks that next summer and faked like rabbits. It was nice. Then she had to go to another internship. I hadn't been told about this internship. I thought we'd make it work. We were a 3 to 4 hour drive apart. When she left with a quick goodbye at my door. I was heartbroken for the second time in my life. I was done with monogamy for a while. After that point I married a wonderful woman at 23. She's amazing and no huge cultural differences that cause us serious family issues. Not a man, but the one who didn't say yes. We were about 3 months pregnant at the time. I told him no. I didn't want him to marry me because of the baby. We had known each other in passing for years, but had only been together for 6 months when we got knocked up. I was raised by a single parent and I always grew up thinking that was how it was going to be for me if I ever was blessed with a child. I try my best to be a loving person, but I'm unwilling to be that way towards myself. If I can't love myself, I can't fathom someone else loving me. I wanted to give him an out. I didn't want to force him to be with me. He proposed again a few months later. We got married almost 2 years after. I was still waiting for him to leave. I wouldn't have blamed him. It took until about a year after we were married for me to relax and realize that he really does love me and that I'm not a burden. My previous relationships always fell apart at the 3-year mark. My husband and I have been together for 7 years, married for 4 years, and have 3 kids, 2 together and 1 a bonus from a previous relationship of his, and rambling is done. TLDR pregnant when proposed. Said no. Few months later, proposed again. Said yes. Happily married for 4 years. Not me but my housemate. Also not quite an O-point housemate, lived and worked in my country and was in the long process of becoming a full citizen. His long-term girlfriend lived and was studying to become a doctor in their home country. They saw as much of each other as they could. Regular holidays together. She would come over here some weekends. He over there on others. One holiday they took together they went to Paris. And, you see where this is going. He took her to the top of the Eiffel Tower and got down on one knee, but she stopped him and told him to get up and not now. Now I'd seen the rock he bought her. My friend was not working a minimum wage job, and boy was he crushed, but they stayed together. She hadn't actually said no, right? Fast forward 2 more years of them being an otherwise happy couple. He is just about finished with the whole citizen thing when she tells him that if he really wants them to be together he needs to pack up and come home. He's pretty broken about all this. He has friends, a career, a life here that he has worked hard to achieve. He has a nice little house of his own now and is looking at another promotion at work. Literally offered it the same day she called him home. But he loves her and his skills are transferable, so he can set up back home easily enough. So he goes. His citizenship application is, obviously, cancelled. 2 months go by and boom, she finishes her medical doctorate and dumps him the same day. Should have read the signs 2 years before my friend, but I would have done the same thing. For love. Edit. I never liked her. Well, this depressing story has a lot to it, but I'll try my best to make it short. I, 26 meters, was dating a chick, 31F, we'll call her Jane. Jane is a very manipulative, emotionless robot who likes to be abused. I of course didn't know this from the get-go. as a lot of people wear a mask at the beginning of a relationship and then slowly release their crazy to test the waters, seeing what they can get away with. Without going into every little thing she did, she would do things to cause me severe anxiety, constantly belittle me, and deny reality. Now that you have some insight into how the relationship was, I can get to the main point. I think we were only a month into the relationship and I'd scheduled for us to see a relationship therapist. She didn't want to go, but I convinced her eventually to go. We got there, and she became defensive and started blaming me for everything going wrong in the relationship. One of her issues was that I called her sexy when we would have sex, and that to her was insulting. Anyways, she didn't end up wanting to stay, so we left. She was threatening to break up with me, as she had many times in the past, so I parked in a parking lot by the ocean and tried to talk some sense into her. After about 15 minutes with no luck, I expected the relationship was basically done, because nothing I said would change her mind that I cared for her. So I told her to get out of the car and walk with me real quick. I remembered the movie Good Luck Chuck, how he proposed to her with a rock like penguins do. So I copied that. I believe she told me to stop being stupid. So we walked back to the car, and I said, okay, I guess that's it then. Then she started trying to be nice, because she realized I was done trying. She then suggested we go eat at a restaurant. When we were there, she was being all sweet, as if nothing had happened, and that she wasn't being a psycho. 15 minutes ago. I tried to fix things for 9 long months before I decided to abort this toxic relationship. The funny thing is, the whole time we were together, she was always trying to get more and more friendly with her ex, supposedly for co-parenting. The whole time I felt off about it, because she was always very sketchy with her phone and making sure we never interacted. So I believe one of two possibilities: she was cheating and just setting him up as a backup, or just setting him up as a backup. Either way, it's faked up to do that. And I ended up being right about suspecting something, because they got back together shortly after I ended things with her. Always trust your gut intuition. It was the worst relationship I was ever in, but I've learned what not to do in a future relationship. My life now. I'm still depressed, but my anxiety isn't as bad. And I'm unemployed because of my depression. We met at uni. One summer holiday we went to a mountain trip together with 3 other classmates. He was the one who organized the whole thing and looked after everyone and everything. I found that very attractive. A month after coming back, I asked my friend who also went to the trip to tell him how I feel about him. He said he already had a girlfriend. A few years after uni, he came to my city. He hinted that he would like to get together with me. I got a letter from him a few days later saying he had had feelings for me since the first year in uni. I wrote back asking why he told my friend he had girlfriend. He said he didn't know it was me and was just asked by this girl who was also in our class. He said yes. The reason he never said anything in uni is because he thought we were from different cities, so it would never work. I wasn't seeing anyone then, but didn't have a feeling like before, so I didn't say yes. A few years later, he got married with a girl he was dating at uni. I went to his city for a business trip. My sister was doing her master's degree in his city. Me and my sister met up with him and a few his friends. Had a good time. I was still single and pretty depressed. He was looking after everyone just like before. I cried when I left his city. Fast forward to a seasonal holiday a few months later, my sister told me that she got together with him. I was furious. I stopped talking to my sister and stopped all contacts with him. I'm happily married now, living in a different country. My sister and him didn't last long at all. She's also married and moved to another country. I sometimes see him in my dreams. I think it was more about remembering myself being young than anything else. I love my husband and our son, and glad I didn't ruin other people's marriage. I went back to my city last year. He came to see me. We feel like old friends. Didn't happen to me like that exactly, but I would say getting cheated on and left is congruent. Either way, a question was answered that could be seen as a rejection of who I was, or rightfully deemed the exact opposite. Rejection is simply a means of understanding that you are one in several billion human beings breathing at any given moment, and you only have one life to live. That is not the life for every other human being. when you have been making the mistake of trying to meld your precious time to suit the life of another. I feel that being rejected is simply a nudge past this roadblock. Snide comments and passive aggressive judgments you've disguised in your mind as contentment. I don't love you anymore is the greatest nudge I could receive toward my path of loving my true self in a life of constantly begging the crowd to love a fake me. This is what I would tell a young person devastated by the loss of a relationship which poisoned every aspect of his fake smile, fake friends, and fake muscles life. Notice that the rejecter was not mentioned in the aforementioned fake life. Saying she had a part in it gives her power that you are going to need in demanding what you deserve going forward. You allowed her to diminish your self-worth for too long. Very similar to the 5 pounds of fat in your lower back doesn't make you happy or confident. Yet, when it's gone, even if it's suddenly, you don't spend 2 weeks in a 5-gallon bucket of ice cream. You celebrate the lost baggage and move forward more confident and self-assured than ever. Your next rejection is metaphorically the slab of gummy, nasty, easy to leave behind love handle basically releasing itself from your life. It should help you walk, live, laugh, love, sing, dance, and celebrate easier and more often. Point: she didn't make you happy, and she rejected you. You just lost 5 pounds of fat. You is American. Thank her for the role she played in your life, wish her nothing but the best, then find the relationship that makes every day your rejection of ever again accepting the treatment of life as though it's not the sand of an hourglass. Easier said than done. But so is becoming president. If he can, I promise you can. I can. We can.